But you have to X out of that. Okay, then I have to X out of that. But you have to X out of that. Okay, then I have to X out of that. But you have to X out of that. Okay, then I have to X out of that. No, don't do this. No.
Your Honor, Audrey Gordon was having some technical difficulties, and so she left the meeting. Would you be able to please let her back in?
Audrey Gordon. All right, let me see if I can do that. And I am just the monitor. I'm not Your Honor, but thank you for your politeness. All right, let's see. Admit her. There she is.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm trying to get to that YouTube thing. Okay. I'm gonna go down here. Oh, I think we have.
While we are waiting, how are you guys planning on introducing exhibits?
You guys can talk amongst yourselves. Are you talking to me? How should I advise you, or how are you?
Miss Blake.
Miss Blake. Okay, thank you. I'm going to be reading how I get into the YouTube.
I'm sorry, Morocco, what do you mean by that?
How do you plan on entering exhibits, whether that's screen sharing or asking counsel and the witness to refer to the case material?
We will be screen sharing our exhibits. What about you guys?
We plan on asking the witness and counsel to refer to their case materials, and then once it's admitted, screen share it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see the courtroom on my YouTube video. Do you guys see anything? Do you see a courtroom on your YouTube video? No, I don't really understand this, and I'm very sorry.
I don't think we have that pulled up, but we do have the live streaming button pulled up. So it looks like you are streaming.
Okay, so I'm live streaming, and then I have to X out of the YouTube. So maybe I did that, right? Does that sound right? Backup scoring, I don't think, tech issues. And okay, I am going to see where our judges are, because they should be in, they should get in too. So here's my participants. Ashley, Audrey, no. Let's see, more. Have you started?
What?
Are you in 7?
No, we're still in our
Your training?
orientation.
Okay, well, I'm stuck. I don't know how to let people, I don't know where my, what are they called? Not judges, the scoring judges. I don't know where they are.
They're with us.
So they're not
They're not coming over yet.
when are they coming on? 4 o'clock?
Whenever Judge Mullen stops.
Okay. So we should just sit.
Yeah.
They should have told us that. Okay.
Thanks for getting that set up, by the way.
Okay, the scoring judges and the judge for this session are still in training. And so that's why I don't see them on my screen. And I just asked the judge and he said they're not ready yet. So I guess we'll all just hang out where we are for now. Tawny, did you just come in? Tawny? Okay, do we have, let's see, there's 18 in the meeting. Okay, do we have our scoring judges? Oh, Tawny has no video or audio. That's not going to work. Tawny, where are you? Where are you, Tawny? There you are. I'm okay. Tawny, you can hear me? Can you unmute and just let me know that you hear me? Yeah. Okay, hold on. Okay, is everybody ready? Are we all ready? Yes? Okay. I'm going to let Livingston in, Judge Livingston, and we will admit him. All right. Judge Livingston is here. And I don't know if we're going to say all rise, but.
I don't think we have to do that.
All right, Judge Livingston, we have Team Spain and Team Morocco here. Okay. Are you?
Okay, and Spain is prosecution.
Spain is prosecution and Morocco is the defense. Okay.
All right.
So far, we know of no conflicts. Everyone has their names correctly, I believe.
See, Stephen Robin, David McLean, is David here yet?
David.
I don't think David's in this courtroom. I think he's in courtroom 8.
He's not on my list. Who is David?
Oh, the third scoring panelist with Jill Phelps.
Okay, let's see if the scoring panelists, 3 people just came in. I thought they were scoring panelists, but
Oh, maybe I got the wrong.
Tawny is, right? I think Tawny, are you a scoring panelist? Yes, I am, she says.
She
Okay.
said.
She
Okay.
texted, yeah. And then what about,
There's Stephen. Could the scoring panelists activate their cameras, please?
I'm
Stephen, I see you. Eve, you're one. Okay, Eve, thank you.
wait, where's Eve? Eve, wave your hand for me. Okay, Eve is a scoring panelist. Stephen is a scoring panelist and Tawny, right? Is that right? Hello?
Tawny?
Tawny? Tawny, are you a scoring panelist, a scoring judge? I think she said yes, but for some reason.
He doesn't have a camera. Okay. So I'm going to ask the scoring panelists to look at the teams we have here and see whether you have a conflict with anyone.
I do
And
not.
if you do not, just give me a thumbs up.
I do not.
Or a chat message, Tawny. Okay. Then Maureen, would you send a note to the powers that be that we're okay?
Yes, I will try to do that. I don't know how to do that. Oh, I'll send it on my phone. Should I do that?
Sure.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to wait for a little bit while we clear the conflicts check before we get going.
I'm not sure there was a conflict, or do you have one?
There is no conflict,
Okay.
and that's what we need to let the main office know.
Okay, well, I just sent a text to Amy. Does that sound
All right.
right? All right, said we're ready to go.
You said that to her, or she said
Yes.
that to you?
I said that to her. I said courtroom 7 is ready to go. Tony, are you saying that you don't recognize the names of the people on you don't have the roster perhaps?
No.
No.
She's saying we're okay with conflicts.
Okay, but Tony Beauprez. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, sorry, I get it. No conflicts. So we're just waiting to hear back?
We're waiting to hear back
'Cause
in
that-
the event that they need to rearrange any of the
Oh, okay,
panelists due to
okay,
a conflict in another courtroom.
okay. So Judge, at your training, they said to let either Amy know or the other woman, Ashley, is that what they said?
They said that they to wait a bit to allow the time for them to
Okay.
make sure there are no conflicts in any of the courtrooms.
Okay, and then they'll get back to us.
Well, I hope so.
Okay.
And I think they've had enough time by now to let us know. So I think we ought to get on the road.
Okay.
Okay, so we are here at round one. Welcome to round one of the state mock trial competition. My name is Randy Livingston. I'm going to be the presiding judge during this round for your teams. My background is that I practiced civil litigation for the most part for 30 years or so in Colorado. I am now retired. I've been working or participating in high school mock trial for probably 10 years or so, mostly as a presiding judge. So I'm excited to do this. I always enjoy the competition. With that, I think we can get going. Is each side ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution is ready for trial.
Okay, Spain, Morocco.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed.
All right, good. Once we get going, there are going to be no recesses. We're going to go straight through from opening statement to closing argument. I'm going to allow between each segment of the trial, meaning between, for example, the opening statement and the first witness, a little bit of a pause to allow the scoring panelists time to fill in their score sheets. Scoring panelists, I'm going to ask you to give me a thumbs up, and Tanya, in your case, a text to let me know that you're done so we can move on to the next portion of the trial. If there are any disputes regarding the activities in this round of the competition, that must be reported to the high school mock trial administrators as according to the competition rules. I see that we have two timekeepers available. It is each team's responsibility to make sure that they comply with the time requirements, and that will be, and failure to comply with the time requirements will be considered as part of the scoring of individual performances. At this time, I'm going to ask each team to introduce the members of the team, starting with Team Morocco, the prosecution.
Your Honor, the Team Morocco is the defense. Would you still like us to introduce
I'm
ourselves?
sorry. Team Spain.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Helen Blake, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Kyle Cusack and conducting the cross-examination of Blake Van Owen. Permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Bo Turnage. Today I'll be providing the direct examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz, the cross-examination of Avery Becker, and the prosecution's closing argument.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Jane Lockley, and today I will be performing the direct examination of Alex Cifuentes, the cross-examination of Taylor Perkins, and the opening statement. Permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ellie Wadsworth, and today I am Jordan Markowitz.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Audrey Gordon, and today I am Kyle Cusack.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Mary Walker, and today I am Alex Cifuentes.
All right, thank you. Would Team Morocco introduce themselves, please?
Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Chalmers Powell, and along with Madeline Proctor and Ashton Varick, we represent the defendant in today's case, Avery Becker. Your Honor, permission for Ms. Proctor and Ms. Varick to introduce themselves.
Please do so.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Madeline Proctor, and I will be representing the defendant in this case, Avery Becker.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Ashlyn Bierick, and I will be representing the defendant, Avery Becker, in today's case.
Your Honor, permission for our witnesses to now introduce themselves.
Please do so.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Trenton Schultz, and I am Taylor Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Jordan Merriweather, and I am Blake Van Owen.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Juliet Bruner, and I am Avery Becker.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, we're going to swear in the team members and the scoring panelists. You don't have to stand, but would each of you raise your right hands? Team members, Do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do, Your Honor.
I do.
Witnesses, would you raise your right hands? Do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
I do, Your Honor.
I do.
Scoring panelists, would you raise your right hands? Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Thank you. Are there any preliminary matters that the sides want to bring before the court before we get going?
Yes, Your Honor. Spain has several preliminary matters.
All right.
First off, we request permission for our attorneys to either stand or sit during direct and cross-examination, and we ask the same for defense.
Is there any objection from the defense to that request?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, then that's granted.
Thank you. We request permission that the witnesses be deemed to be on the stand when seated and appearing virtually on the Zoom screen, and we ask the same for defense.
That's fine. That's going to have to be how we're going to operate.
We request, for the purposes of expediency, that any exhibits admitted by the court be deemed to have been constructively published to the jury, and we ask the same for defense.
Mr. Powell?
I have no objection to that, Your Honor.
I think that the procedure is going to be that an exhibit will be put on the Zoom, published to everybody via Zoom. If it is admitted, then that will serve as publication. If it is not admitted, then I guess we will deem that it was not shown to the scoring panels. Is that acceptable?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, that was my understanding.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Blake?
Yes, we have one final preliminary matters. We also seek the court's permission to deem any exhibit that is shared by means of screen sharing to have been constructively handed to opposing counsel for review. And again, we ask the same for defense.
Mr. Powell?
I have no objection to that, Your Honor.
I think that we can deem that it is shown, but I think that you ought to make the point that you are showing it, whether it's constructively or actively, to your opposing partner.
Yes, Your Honor.
So that we just make sure that everybody knows what is being shown and that we go through that little ritual of having the other side see what is being presented for exhibits. Is that understood, Mr. Powell?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense plans on asking the witness and opposing counsel to refer to their case materials while attempting to admit an exhibit. And then once it is admitted, or if it is admitted, we screen share it to the jury. Is that acceptable, Your Honor?
That's acceptable to me, Ms. Blake. Is that all right?
Yes, that is acceptable.
You
for
understand
us.
that procedure?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
Your Honor.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Blake?
The prosecution has no further preliminary matters.
All right. Mr. Powell, do you have anything else? Go ahead.
Your Honor, the defense has two preliminary matters. Firstly, Your Honor, the defense requests that the stipulated facts be constructively read into the record.
Ms. Blake, do you have an objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, then the stipulated facts are constructively read into the record. Mr. Powell.
And finally, Your Honor, the defense requests the court to take judicial notice of the complaint against Ms. Becker.
Ms. Blake?
No objections.
Well, the complaint is part of the record. And as part of the record, I don't think the court has to take further notice of it. The record, the court's record includes the complaint, and the court has read the complaint and is aware of its contents.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
With that,
Anything? I'm sorry?
with that, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed.
All right, good. Then with that, why don't we move immediately to opening statements? Ms. Blake?
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, on March 6th, 2020, the defendant, Avery Becker, was seen on ring camera wearing a devil mask and entering the home of her mock trial coach, Mackenzie Brackman. Now, Avery had planned to enter the home of her coach that day and vandalize his property. However, what Avery didn't expect was that Brackman would be home that day, and that Brackman, aware of the attack on his home, armed himself against the intruder using a knife from his kitchen. Avery, shocked and panicked to see Brackman sitting in his kitchen, overtook him and gained control of the knife. The two struggled as Mackenzie Brackman fought for his life and Avery Becker fought to end their long-lasting conflict. Finally, near the front door, Avery stabbed Mr. Brackman in the back, literally. Avery proceeded to exit the house and left her mock trial coach dying, face down on the floor. The laws of physics don't allow an immovable object and an unstoppable force to coexist. One must eventually give way to the other. If there were laws governing the dynamics of high school mock trial, the same thing would be true. A team can't succeed if one person is an immovable object and another is an oppositional, unstoppable force. In this case, a skilled public defender and beloved part-time mock trial coach, Mackenzie Brackman, was that immovable object. Brackman was a lawyer seeking to impart skills and motivate the next generation of would-be lawyers. But Brackman had his methods that led to success. Avery Becker, one of Brackman's more difficult mock trial students, was the unstoppable force. An irreverent young person with her own way of doing things, or rather refusing to do things, Avery wanted no part of Mackenzie Brackman's preparation for trial, or even mock trial practices at all. Avery won awards, but was also demoted by Brackman for her unwillingness to be part of the team. Their dispute grew so heated that Avery vandalized Mr. Brackman's car. And then, Avery, fed up with her coach and seeking to regain what little pride she had left, went to Mr. Brackman's home to vandalize it too. Except, unfortunately for Avery, the immovable object, Mackenzie Brackman, happened to be home when Avery snuck in the back door. And before Avery Becker could leave, a physical altercation had broken out. That fight ended with a knife plunged in Mackenzie Brackman's back, and he died in a pool of blood in his front hallway because of Avery Becker. Today, the prosecution will call 3 witnesses to the stand. First, we will call Detective Jordan Markowitz, who will explain her findings on the crime scene, as well as the data collected from Avery's phone on the day of the crime, which proves through cell tower tracking that her phone was near Brackman's house on March 6th, the day of the murder. Next, we will call Kyle Cusack, a certified crime scene reconstruction investigator, who will describe to you the steps she took to reach her conclusion on the case. She will explain to you how the ring camera footage from the day of the murder and the scuff marks in Brackman's home are evidence of a break-in and struggle that ultimately resulted in murder. Finally, we will call Alex Cifuentes, who, previous to her crime, was great friends with Avery. Alex will relay to you the mutual loathing between Avery and Mr. Brackman. She will describe the level of disrespect and poor temper Avery had toward Mr. Brackman. Then, Alex will recall the night Avery vandalized Mr. Brackman's car. And finally, she will describe to you her text with Avery, in which Avery explains her plan to break into Brackman's home. Members of the jury, the evidence the prosecution will provide today overwhelmingly leads to the conclusion that Avery Becker, the unstoppable force, grew fed up with her mock trial coach, and in her attempt to vandalize his home, Avery violently turned to murder. At the conclusion of this case, the prosecution asks that you find the defendant guilty of 2 counts: murder in the first degree and second-degree burglary of a dwelling. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Viereck, are you ready to go?
Yes, Your Honor. Justice doesn't come in a puzzle box with a picture on top. It's Friday, March 6th. Detective Markowitz gets a call to the home of Mackenzie Brackman. Mr. Brackman is dead on the floor, and there's a bloody knife nearby. He continues to investigate, but she did not have any fingerprints. She did not have any DNA. She did not have any suspects. Racing to find one, she calls a single member of Mr. Brackman's mock trial team, Alex Fuentes, who immediately points the finger at Avery Becker, and the detective zeroes in. See, this is her chance to put a picture on the puzzle box. In an effort to make all the pieces line up, Detective Markowitz becomes an unstoppable force. She forces each piece together. And she misses the scheming witness, the alibi, and the stronger suspect. Avery Becker was a senior at Colorado High School. She was the star of the mock trial team. People like Alex Fuentes and Mr. Brackman wished she would work harder. Miss Becker is talented, but she isn't perfect. When Mr. Brackman told her she didn't deserve any of the awards she had won at the regional tournament, she let her emotions get the best of her, and she was kicked off the mock trial team. She went home, licked her wounds, and tried to make amends, but she did not put on a mask and break into the home of Mackenzie Brackman, and she did not stab him in the back. Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Ashlyn Bierek, and together with Chalmers Powell and Madeline Proctor, we have the privilege of representing Miss Avery Becker in today's trial. The prosecution must prove to you each and every element of each and every crime. They will fail you. As they do, pay attention to three things: the screenshots, the cell tower records, and the stronger suspect. The screenshots. Detective Markowitz let Alex Fuentes send her screenshots of what she claims are text messages that came from Avery Becker. Though the detective says she is an expert in cell phone data recovery, she didn't recover any data. She did not confirm that Avery Becker sent these text messages. She did not question that Alex Fuentes forgot her phone on the day of the interview. And she did not question that it took her a full day to send these screenshots. Can the prosecution really prove that Avery Becker sent these text messages? Cell tower records. These records are just dangerous enough to point the finger, but too vague to prove anything. They won't tell you where Avery Becker was on the day of the murder. She was with Taylor Perkins all day. They won't tell you if she had her phone. She didn't. Alex Fuentes was the last one with it. And most importantly, it won't rule out any alternate suspects whom Detective Markowitz failed to investigate. Ask yourselves, what do these records really prove? Stronger suspect. A fellow student at Colorado High School, Blair Rollins. Blair's father was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. His attorney was Mackenzie Brackman. Blair Rollins only lived a few blocks away from Avery Becker, and Blair Rollins was never interviewed for today's trial. To this day, no one knows where he is. Why did no one question Rollins? At the end of this trial, Miss Madeline Proctor will walk you through the evidence. She will walk you through the minefield of reasonable doubt, the ignored screenshots, the ignored alibi, and the ignored alternate suspect. She will ask for a verdict of not guilty, because justice doesn't come in a puzzle box with a picture on top. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
Just a minute, please. I'm going to ask the scorekeepers to let me know when they have completed their score for that round. Okay? Okay? All right. Okay, the prosecution may call its first witness.
And Your Honor, before we begin, I would ask that the courtroom monitor turn her camera off and go on mute, please.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I was off. Where am I? Let's see. Can somebody help me figure out how to do that? I thought I was off.
There should be a button that says stop video and a microphone that
Where?
you can mute.
Where's the stop video button? Down at the bottom? Oh,
Bottom left-hand corner.
okay, stop video. Is that,
There you go.
okay, and then am I also on mute now?
No, not yours.
I don't
Not
see
on,
myself, so I can't. Oh, here. No, I can, let's see where I am. No, show myself view. I'm sorry, I don't see it.
The mute button is just right next to the stop video button that you click to turn off your screen.
Oh,
So it should just be to the left.
thank you.
okay. Ready to go, Mr. Turnage.
Detective Markowitz, please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hello, my name is Detective Jordan Markowitz.
What is your profession?
I'm a detective with the Denver Police Department.
For how long have you been practicing in this field?
Well, I've been a detective for the past 7 years, but I've actually been working with the Denver Police Department for roughly 13 years.
Do you have any specialized skill sets in this field?
Yes, I have specialized training with and experience with cell phones.
How were you trained to be able to use this skill set?
Well, I had to complete a training course and pass a certification test through the American Academy of Law Enforcement. Through my training, I learned about the different types of cell phone data and records that can be obtained, how to use forensic software, such as the Celebrite system to download the information from a cell phone, how to acquire and interpret cellular records, and how to obtain and interpret cell tower data.
And how does this skill set help you with your investigations?
Well, I use cell tower data on a regular basis. I've used it in over 50 cases. I have also downloaded the contents of literally hundreds of cell phones.
Your Honor, I tender Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert in the fields of forensic cell data recovery and crime scene investigation.
No objection to the testimony from Detective Markowitz as an expert in those fields, Your Honor.
All right, then. The detective is admitted as an expert in the fields of forensic cell phone data recovery and crime scene investigation. Good.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Markowitz, how did you become involved in this case?
On March 6th of 2020, I received a phone call from first responders who found victim, Mackenzie Brackman, deceased just inside the front door at the residence 444 South Flower Street. Officers and I secured the scene at approximately 2:20 p.m.
Describe your observations when you arrived at the crime scene.
When I got to the house, the front door was open, and I could see Mackenzie Brackman laying face down in a pool of what appeared to be blood. I then noticed, and there was a knife near his body, as well as a stab wound on his upper shoulder. I then noticed a Ring doorbell on the outside of the house and walked around the house where I found 2 more Ring doorbells. The side gate was unlatched and the back door was unlocked. When I walked through the back door, I found the house in a slight disarray. There was a knocked over chair, a broken plate, and the knife drawer was slightly open. It had knives of different logos not logos, brands and sizes, and there was a knife block missing a knife.
Explain the opinion you first formed with this new information.
The crime scene was consistent based on the many other homicides I've investigated, with a break-in where the victim caught an intruder in his house. After the confrontation with the intruder, it is clear that the victim went to the front door after being stabbed.
What was the next step you took in your investigation?
I downloaded the contents of Mackenzie Brackman's phone and watched the Ring videos. Then I retained copies of the videos for our files, making sure that they were in the same condition as when I found them.
What did you find when you downloaded the contents of Brackman's phone?
I found a tremendous number of emails and text messages related to something called mock trial. Mackenzie Brackman had also been found in a shirt related to mock trial, so it didn't take a lot of digging to find out that Brackman was the mock trial coach at Colorado High School.
And what did you do to further your investigation regarding Brackman's time as the mock trial coach at Colorado High School?
Well, I reached out to the mock trial team and got the contact information for all the students. When I talked to Alex Cifuentes, a member of the mock trial team, in an interview, she told me about Avery Becker.
Based on that interview that you had with Alex Cifuentes, did she give you anything?
Yes.
What did she give you?
She sent me a copy of text messages between her and Avery Becker.
Your Honor, may I show the witness what has previously been marked as Exhibit 14?
Yes, you may.
Detective Markowitz, do you recognize this?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what this is?
Those are the screenshots Cifuentes sent me of her text messages with Avery Becker.
And was it represented to you that these text messages were accurate and unaltered?
Yes.
So is this a true and accurate representation of text messages exchanged between Avery Becker and Alex Cifuentes?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 14 to evidence.
Ms. Proctor, is there any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense objects to hearsay under Rule 801. This is an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, as well as which is not admissible under Rule 802.
Your Honor, response, Your Honor.
Mr. Courage, what is your response to the objection?
Pursuant to Rules 801D and 803.3, this is not hearsay. 801D, because it is a statement made by an opposing party, Avery Becker, as well as the text messages show Avery Becker's plan to break into Mackenzie Brackman's house and trash it, which is classified as a then existing state of mind.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
Before I begin, we would like to request an updated exhibit, as this is the outdated exhibit for the case. It says text me in the upper left-hand corner. But in response to the objection, this under 801D2, the exception for party opponents, sufficient evidence has to be laid that the defendant was in fact the one who sent those text messages, and there has been no foundation laid that Ms. Becker was the one who sent those text messages.
Response, Your Honor.
Well, before you respond, wasn't the question or the testimony that this was represented to the witness as being from?
Yes, Your Honor, that was the testimony.
Okay. So, Ms. Proctor, how do you get around that?
Because Detective Markowitz was not the one who has anything on authenticity under Rule 901, which can only be testified to under the examples of someone who has directly seen this message come from someone, or who has directly, who knows that this message came from someone such as Ms. Cifuentes. Detective Markowitz is relying on hearsay from Ms. Cifuentes to determine the authenticity.
Response,
So,
Your Honor.
Mr. Turner, there's a problem that counsel has pointed out, is that you have not established at this point that there is a foundation for stating that this is actually from the person you say it is, other than a representation, which is hearsay itself.
Your Honor, if I may, Detective Markowitz has been classified as an expert witness. It is her profession to work at the police department, and she has done interviews in all of her time that she has been working for the Denver Police Department. Because she is an expert in that field, she is qualified to make an opinion regarding the authenticity of these text messages.
Response to that, Your Honor?
Yes, Ms. Proctor.
An expert qualification does not mean that you can disclose hearsay. So regardless of Detective Markowitz's expertise, she is not qualified to use hearsay and present it here today. However, she can present her opinion and rely on that hearsay. She just cannot necessarily admit that exhibit because she can't authenticate it.
Response, Your Honor.
Ms. Proctor, what do you mean by disclosing hearsay? I didn't understand that.
So experts are allowed to rely on hearsay under Rule 703 in forming their opinion, and they can disclose that opinion to the jury. However, they cannot present that evidence, which is hearsay, just because they are an expert.
Your Honor, response.
Ms. Turnage.
Detective Markowitz is not trying to use her expertise to admit these as hearsay improperly. She is simply using her expertise to form an opinion on the authenticity of these text messages based on the interview she conducted.
Okay, well, I think it's a close question, and I'm not sure that you have established a foundation for the accuracy or the validity of the exhibit. But for the reason that she is an expert and that there is some latitude on what an expert can rely upon, I will overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Markowitz, who sent the text shown in gray?
Avery Becker did.
How do you know this?
I know because of the contact name at the top, the first text messages where it says, "Hey Alex, it's Avery," and because of my interview with Cifuentes, where she told me these text messages occurred with Becker.
Now let me
learn from the
jump in, Mr. Turner, just a second. There was also an objection as to the accuracy of this exhibit, and we didn't resolve that. Was there an update?
Your Honor, I believe that the objection to the accuracy of the exhibit was within the hearsay objection, if I'm mistaken.
No, I think the objection to the accuracy of the exhibit was that there is an updated exhibit.
Yes, Mr. Turnage, and Your Honor, the objection to the accuracy was this is the outdated version of the exhibit that has text me in the upper hand left corner. The updated version for this case does not have that, but our counsel can screen share the updated version of Exhibit 14 if you would like.
Well, I don't think that's necessary. However, the discrepancy will be noted in the record. Go ahead, Mr. Turnage.
Thank you. Detective Markowitz, what did you learn from these text messages about Avery Becker's dealings with Mr. Brackman?
I learned that he had recently been kicked off the mock trial team and was pretty upset about it and was trying to get back onto the team.
Was Avery allowed back onto the team?
No, he was not. Or sorry, she was not.
And did she know that she wasn't going to be allowed back onto the team?
Objection, Your Honor. This does not fall under Rule 602, this falls under Rule 602, which is the need for personal knowledge. Detective Markowitz cannot speculate on what Miss Becker did or did not know, or on her feelings and thoughts about being kicked off the team. This is outside of anything that she has testified about personally knowing.
Response, Your Honor. Detective Markowitz is able to directly tell from these text messages, which have already been admitted as an exhibit, that Avery Becker knew she was not going to be allowed back onto the mock trial team based on the plan that she shows.
Your Honor, as long as it is clarified that it is just Detective Markowitz's opinion from Exhibit 14 that Miss Becker was already aware of that, and not that Miss Becker was aware that she would or would not get back onto the team.
So you are withdrawing your objection so long as the record is clear on that
Yes,
position.
Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Turner, you may go ahead.
Detective Markowitz, did Avery Becker know she wasn't going to be allowed back onto the team?
Yes, according to the text, she was aware of that.
Knowing that she wasn't going to get her spot back on the team, what do Avery's second and third texts sent from the bottom show?
They show that Avery was forming a plan to trash Brackman's house while she thought that Brackman would be at work.
What was the next step you took in your investigation?
Well, I tried to set up a meeting with Avery Becker. However, I was unable to do so. So I got her phone number as well as cell tower records from March 6th.
What information are you able to learn from cell tower records?
Well, actually, what I received are called call detail records, or CDRs. A CDR is the record created when you place or receive a call or text. Generally, the record shows things like the date and time of the communication, whether it was incoming or outgoing, the other phone number involved, whether it was a text or a call. And the CDR also identifies which tower and specifically which antenna the phone communicates with, which is usually the nearest cell tower to the phone.
Your Honor, permission to show the witness what has previously been marked as Exhibit 16.
You may do so.
Detective Markowitz, do you recognize this?
Yes,
Can you tell the jury what this is?
that is a map of the cell towers in which Becker's phone was communicating with on March 6th. It also has Becker and Brackman's house labeled on the map.
And is this a true and accurate representation of a map of CDR towers near Avery Becker and Mackenzie Brackman's houses?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I move Exhibit 16 be admitted to evidence.
Ms. Proctor?
No objection to Exhibit 16, Your Honor.
Then Exhibit 16 is admitted.
Detective Markowitz, please describe how Exhibit 16 related to your investigation.
Well, once I examined which cell towers Becker's phone communicated with, I transponded them on a map which included the location of Becker and Brackman's houses. It was pretty clear that Becker's phone was at Brackman's house at 1:17 p.m. on the afternoon of the murder.
What can you see above each marked cell tower?
You can see timestamps.
And can you explain what you drew on the map?
Yeah, so based on the location and order of the towers that Becker's phone communicated with, I realized there was a path that went from Avery Becker's house pretty directly to Mackenzie Brackman's house.
So what does the CDR tower data indicate?
It shows that Becker traveled from her house to Brackman's house right before the murder took place.
Detective Markowitz, based on all the evidence you've just discussed, have you come to any conclusions on this case?
Yes. The evidence I reviewed leads me to conclude that Avery Becker entered Mackenzie Brackman's house and was surprised to find Brackman in his home. A fight then ensued, resulting in Becker gaining control of a knife and stabbing Mackenzie Brackman in the residence.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Proctor. You have cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Detective Markowitz.
Good evening.
My name is Madeline Proctor. Let's start with your arrival on the scene. You were called to 444 South Flower Street on March 6th?
Correct.
And once you got there, you found Coach Brackman lying dead on the floor.
Yes, he was laying face down in a pool of what appeared to be blood.
So immediately you started trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, didn't you?
Yes, I followed the evidence where it took me.
Let's talk about how you did that, starting with the Ring video footage. No suspect is identifiable from that footage.
Correct. The person in the videos is wearing a mask.
Not just a mask, but gloves and an oversized hoodie too, right?
Correct.
All right, now let's talk about those call detail records you were referencing earlier. Those call detail records are not 100% accurate, are they?
Correct. However, they are almost always accurate. So I would say 99%.
But not 100%.
Correct.
Because, Your Honor, may I take a brief moment just to quiet my dogs?
Why don't we suspend the time, and Ms. Proctor will take care of her animal.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be fast. All right.
All right, I hope no harm was done to any animals during the creation of this video.
No, Your Honor.
All right, good. Go ahead. Time's up, or time continues.
Because cell phones don't always connect to the nearest tower, do they?
That's true. However, they almost always do.
But they do not always.
Correct.
Let's talk about how you arrived at Miss Becker as a suspect then. You talked to one of Coach Brackman's students.
Yes, when I got the contact information of all the mock trial students, I luckily talked to Alex Fuentes first.
Detective Markowitz, I understand you'd like to explain, but you'll have some time for that on redirect. So I would appreciate it if you would just answer my question. And my question was that you talked to only one of Coach Brackman's students, right?
Correct.
And that was Alex Fuentes.
Yes.
And after you talked to her, she told you about some text messages.
Correct.
So you decided to call Miss Fuentes down to the station.
Yeah, her and her family.
Right, and once she got there, you were supposed to talk about the text messages.
Well, we were just talking about mock trial in general and her experience on the team.
Detective Markowitz, is it your testimony that at that interview, you were not supposed to talk about the text messages?
We were supposed to talk about the text messages, but we were not strictly supposed to talk about that.
But you were supposed to talk about the text messages on her cell phone, right?
Correct.
But she did not bring that cell phone to the interview.
No, it was a little odd seeing a teenager without their phone.
Detective Markowitz, exactly. It was unusual for her to have not brought her cell phone.
I agree. However, there's some nerve going into talking to a police. I totally understand.
But you never asked her why she did not bring her cell phone?
No.
And in fact, you never told her to turn around and grab the phone?
Grab which phone?
To go to her home and grab her phone to bring it to you?
Well, she didn't know she forgot her phone until she was at the police station.
But you never asked her to go back and get it?
No, that wouldn't make much sense when she could easily send me screenshots.
Exactly. You asked Miss Fuentes to just send you some screenshots.
Yep.
And she sent those screenshots the next day?
She did.
So you said something on direct that I noticed, and I just wanted to write it down so I wouldn't forget it. You said you've downloaded hundreds of phones before.
Yes, I've downloaded the contents of literally hundreds of cell phones.
Right, using the Cellbrite technology?
Yep.
But you never thought to download Miss Fuentes' phone?
Correct.
And you never downloaded any other phone in this case except for the victim?
Nope.
All right. So after you decided that Miss Becker was a suspect, she became the only suspect you investigated.
Yes.
You did not investigate any other suspect.
Objection asked and answered.
I'm just clarifying that there was no other suspect she investigated at any point in her investigation, not just after she decided Miss Becker was a suspect.
Well,
I think during cross-examination, the counsel has some latitude to emphasize those points she wants to emphasize, so overruled.
So you did not investigate any other suspect except for Miss Becker?
Well, technically, after I found Becker, I didn't investigate any other suspects. But before that, I talked to Alex Fuentes.
Oh, so you're changing your statement now?
No.
I see. So you talked to Alex Fuentes as a suspect then?
I talked to her before. I didn't know if she was a suspect, but she was a member of my investigation.
Detective Markowitz, I did not ask you about members of your investigation. My question was just that you did not investigate anyone else who was a suspect in this case. It sounds like your answer is yes.
I suppose you could say that. Avery Becker was my main and only suspect.
All right. Detective Markowitz, thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Mr. Turnage, do you have any redirect within the scope of the cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective Markowitz, why didn't you investigate any other suspects?
Well, once I started to investigate Avery Becker, the evidence continued to mount up. Becker had motive. She had recently been kicked off the mock trial team by Mackenzie Brackman. Becker had opportunity. According to the text with Cifuentes, she had a plan to trash Brackman's house when she thought Brackman would be at work. And finally, there's evidence linking Becker's phone to the area of Brackman's phone right before the murder took place. I mean, there was no need to look at any other suspects considering the fact that Becker had reason, means, and intention.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right, Ms. Proctor, do you have any recross within the scope of the redirect?
Are we permitting recross in today's court, Your Honor?
We are within the scope of the redirect.
All right, Your Honor. I will do a brief recross within the scope then.
Go ahead.
Detective Markowitz, you said that none of the other evidence pointed to anyone but Miss Becker, correct?
Correct.
And if Mr. Powell could pull up Exhibit 16, which has been previously admitted. So on Exhibit 16, you said that these cell tower records prove that she went to Coach Brackman's home, right?
Yes.
But there is another house marked in the same cell tower arc as Miss Becker's home.
Correct.
That's Blair Rollins' house, isn't it?
It is. You can see that labeled on the map.
Thank you, Detective Markowitz. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Then the witness is excused.
Thank you.
And we'll take a brief break to allow the scoring panelists to complete their score sheets. Okay, Stephen.
Your Honor, the
Just a minute,
prosecution
please.
called.
Just a minute, please. Tani, are we good? Okay. Ms. Blake, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
Ms. Kuzak, I remind you, you remain under the oath you took at the beginning of these proceedings.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Blake.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Kuzak.
Good afternoon.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Kuzak.
And what do you do, Ms. Kuzak?
Well, I am a crime scene reconstructionist, and I was certified by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
And what do you do as a crime scene reconstructionist?
Well, I normally investigate complex crime scenes such as home invasions, homicides, domestic violence, fatal accidents, armed robberies, burglaries, and other property crimes.
And Ms. Kuzak, how long have you been investigating such complex crime scenes?
Well, I've been a CSR for about 19 years now, and for the past 3 years of my tenure, I've been working with the city of Denver.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzak. Your Honor, I now tender Ms. Kuzak as an expert in the fields of crime scene reconstruction and crime scene investigation.
Mr. Powell?
Your Honor, I have no objection to Ms. Kuzak testifying as an expert in crime scene reconstruction and crime scene investigation, Your Honor.
All right, then, with there being no objection, Ms. Kuzak is admitted in those areas as an expert witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Kuzak, tell me about how you professionally approach crime scenes.
Well, I have 2 key principles that I normally follow, where first I assume that every case is going to trial, so I conduct a thorough and comprehensive investigation, where second, I memorialize, organize, and document all of the evidence with the mindset of future reconstruction. And with these 2 key principles in mind, they allow me to have a more accurate and efficient flow with my CSR work, which I approach in the form of 5 steps.
And could you tell me about those steps?
Yes, of course. Well, for step one, this is where I create a witness tracking sheet, physical evidence tracking sheet, and a rudimentary flowchart and timeline, all of which so that I can see key physical and chronological relationships. Steps 2 and 3 is where I prepare materials for formal analysis, and then I gather all the evidence and place it into a spreadsheet so that I can again see these physical relationships as well. For step 4, this is where the evidence is then organized and a hypothesis is developed. And then step 5 involves my CSR initial report, which then goes into peer review, resulting in a final reconstruction report.
Now, Ms. Kuzak, you mentioned a witness tracking sheet. Could you tell me more about that?
Yes, well, this witness tracking sheet of mine is specifically in step 1 out of my step 5 process. And this is where I go a little bit into more depth as to who had been interviewed by the police, and also gives me a little more insight as to who had possible connections with Mr. Brackman prior to his death.
Now, Ms. Kuzak, would you recognize a copy of the witness tracking sheet that you prepared for this case?
I would, yes.
Your Honor, permission to bring up what has been previously marked as Exhibit 17.
You may do so.
Ms. Kuzak, do you recognize this?
I do, yes.
Could you please tell the jury what this is?
Well, this is my witness information tracking sheet that I produce as a part of my reconstruction process.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of this witness tracking sheet?
It is, yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, I ask that Exhibit 17 be admitted into evidence.
Mr. Powell?
Your Honor, to be clear, is Ms. Blake entering Exhibit 17, the entirety of Exhibit 17, or just the witness information tracking sheet?
Just the witness information tracking sheet.
Your Honor, I object to hearsay.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
Under Rule 8036, this is a regularly conducted activity and is thus exempt from hearsay.
Mr. Powell?
Your Honor, insufficient foundation has not been laid. Insufficient foundation has been laid that this is a regularly recorded record of a business.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak has made it clear that part of how she professionally approaches crime scenes, which she has been doing for 19 years now, is creating this witness tracking sheet. This is step 1 of her 5-step process that she uses for every case. Thus, sufficient foundation has been laid, as we know that Ms. Kuzak does use a witness tracking sheet and prepares one for every case that she works on.
Mr. Powell?
Your Honor, a regularly recorded record of an activity has to be regular. This only occurs when there was a crime has occurred. Therefore, it's not regular.
To respond to crimes? And isn't her job in the regular course of her activities responding to crimes?
Yes,
So in the regular course of her activity, she says she prepares this thing.
Yes, Your Honor. However, crimes do not happen on a regular basis. Therefore, this is not a regularly recorded record of a business or activity.
Ms. Blake?
Your Honor, Ms. Kuzak has made it clear that she has been working with complex crime scenes for over 19 years. Even if crimes are not that common, as Mr. Powell has said, she's still been working with these regularly for 19 years.
Well, I think that to come within the hearsay exception of a regularly conducted activity, it has to be an activity that has some sort of mechanical aspect to it in which the document is created almost in a mechanical fashion that doesn't require consideration or input. And this seems to be a specialized document that is created by the witness for her own purposes of tracking the information that she is looking at. As such, it's more a form of an argument of what she thinks she's doing and a way to organize her own thoughts, which may result in an opinion, and it may result in an opinion or an observation as to what she thinks is happening based on the evidence, which she can testify to. I don't think this is really something that can be termed a regularly conducted activity However, and in normal circumstances, I think I would not allow this in because she could testify as to what her conclusions are and explain her rationale supporting those conclusions. But in this case, given the parameters of mock trial, I'm going to overrule the objection and allow Exhibit 17 in.
Your Honor, because Ms. Blake only admitted the witness tracking sheet, I request that only the witness information tracking sheet be shown to the jury.
I think that's fair, unless Ms. Blake, are you going to take us down the primrose path and get to each other section of this exhibit?
No, Your Honor, just the witness tracking sheet is.
All right, just the exhibit tracking sheet on Exhibit 17 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Now, Ms. Kuzak, could you tell me what is on this witness tracking sheet?
Yes, well, specifically, it shows all of the
Action, Your Honor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of that past ruling was that only the witness information tracking sheet would be shown, not the evidence tracking sheet or the flow chart prepared by Ms. Kuzak.
Well, you're right, and given the limitations we have in terms of Zoom, we're going to deem this to be only the witness tracking portion, and we will pretend that the rest of it doesn't exist.
Your
Yes.
Honor, our timekeeper does have a slide with only the witness tracking sheet, so.
Oh, okay, well, you guys are great with this technical stuff, so there you go.
Thank you, Your Honor. If
Except
I may ask.
as modified is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Kuzak, if I may ask my question again, could you please tell me what is on this witness tracking sheet?
Yes, well, this tracking sheet shows all of the witnesses and possible suspects that the police did interview, including some people who are in court today, including Taylor Perkins, Avery Becker, as well as Alex Cifuentes. And also they did the interview for other former Colorado high school students as well.
And what is the significance of this witness tracking sheet?
Well, the police department for the city of Denver was able to conduct a thorough investigation for this specific crime, interviewing multiple people who had possible connections with Mr. Brackman, as I stated before, including the witnesses in court today, as well as other Colorado high school students.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzak. Thank you, timekeeper. You may take down what is marked as Exhibit 17. Now, Ms. Kuzak, how do all of these steps and moving pieces play a role in how you come to conclusions about cases?
Well, this way of approaching crime scenes gives me a detailed and clear view of what exactly happened at the given crime scene.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzak. Now, I'd like to move on to the crime scene at 444 South Flower Street from March 6, 2020. Tell me a little bit about the physical setup of this particular crime scene.
Well, while I was investigating the scene, the first thing that I noticed were scuff marks on the floor right by the back entrance. Then as I moved from that back door area to the kitchen, I noticed a broken plate on the floor, as well as an open knife drawer and a knife block with one empty slot. Then as I moved from that kitchen area to the front door, there was a blood trail which ended where Mr. Brackman had been found by the police. Additionally, I was also able to review security footage showing a masked individual roaming around the residence prior to Mr. Brackman's death.
Could you tell me more about that security footage?
Yes, well, this security footage was taken from the Ring security camera system that was set up just outside of the residence, all of which pointing towards different entry points, such as the front door, the south side gate, as well as the back door.
And Ms. Kuzak, would you recognize a copy of some of these security footages if it were shown to you?
I would, yes.
Your Honor, permission to show Ms. Kuzak what has been previously marked as Exhibit 12.
Granted.
Ms. Kuzak, do you recognize this?
I do, yes.
And could you please tell the jury what this is?
Well, this is the third out of 4 videos that I was able to review. And in this particular video, it is showing the masked individual entering through the back glass sliding door into the residence. Now, for this to have had occurred, this individual would have had to move around to the residence and enter through the south side gate in order to get to this back door.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of this third ring video?
It is, yes.
Your Honor, I ask that Exhibit 12 be admitted into evidence.
Mr. Powell,
No objection to 12, Your Honor.
Exhibit 12 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Your Honor, permission to bring up what has been previously marked as Exhibit 13.
Granted. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Kuzak, do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
Could you please tell the jury what this is?
This is the fourth and final video that I was able to review, this time showing the same masked individual running out of the front door, escaping the scene.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of this fourth and final ring video?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I now admit Exhibit 13 into evidence.
Mr. Powell,
No objection to 13, Your Honor.
Exhibit 13 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Kuzak, how did these ring security videos play a role in how you came to a conclusion about this case?
Well, the individual in the videos matching the general height and build of the defendant sitting here today, Avery Becker, was roaming around the residence, getting caught in all the security cameras, which were sending notifications to Mr. Brackman's phone, alerting him that there's motion happening outside of the house. Now, this would have given Mr. Brackman time to arm himself and prepare before this individual would have then entered through that back glass sliding door.
Now, Ms. Kuzak, what would have happened if Mr. Brackman, say, didn't have his phone on him or if his notifications were turned off?
If Mr. Brackman had his notifications turned off or was in the circumstance where he did not have his phone on him, he would have either at least heard this back glass sliding door open as this individual is entering, or would have heard this intruder shuffling around the kitchen area.
And Ms. Kuzak, what would have happened after the perpetrator entered the residence?
I believe there to be a scuffle that immediately ensued.
And could you tell me more about that?
Yes, well, this struggle occurred immediately inside and to the right of the back entrance based on the scuff marks on the floor, which indicate that more than one person were in close contact there. That struggle would have then continued to move from that back entrance to the kitchen, where the plate was knocked off the table and where Mr. Brackman was disarmed of his weapon and stabbed in the back of his upper left shoulder in a bear hug formation. That struggle would have then continued to move from that kitchen area to the front entrance, where the knife would have then been pulled out of Mr. Brackman's back, resulting in immediate death by the front door.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzak. Now, I have one final question. In all of your 19 years of experience in investigating such complex crime scenes, what are your final thoughts on this case?
Well, my final thoughts are this, is that in the end, this was a planned burglary gone bad. You know, the intruder clearly had knowledge of the residence and chose a day and time in which Mr. Brackman would have most likely been outside of the house. However, on this particular day, Mr. Brackman was in fact home, resulting in the struggle between the victim and the intruder, the disarming of the victim, and then resulting in the unfortunate death of Mr. Brackman.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzak. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. Mr. Powell, do you have cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Ms. Blake, Ms. Kuzak. My name is Chalmers Powell. Let's talk about how you perform your reconstructions. You start by detailing and organizing and documenting all the evidence in this case.
That's right, yes.
With the mindset of future reconstruction.
Yes, that's right.
And you do this by creating a witness tracking sheet,
Yes,
an evidence tracking sheet,
yes,
and a flowchart.
that's right.
And all the information in the witness tracking sheet was given to you by the Denver Police Department, correct?
Yes, that's correct. As a CSR, I do work closely with the police department. That's right.
And all the information in the evidence tracking sheet was given to you by the Denver Police Department.
Yes, that's right.
And to the best of your knowledge, all this information is correct, right?
Yes,
And if something was incorrect, you would certainly take it out and maybe change it.
yes, I would.
And you referred and looked at this document in preparation for today's trial.
I did, yes.
And you do all of this because you assume that every single one of your cases will go to trial.
Yes, and I mean specifically in this case too, regarding a homicide that occurred, of course it's going to go to trial. So I make sure that all of my information is clear so that I can project it in trial if needed be.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the evidence you tracked. You identify Department Evidence 102 as the digital images downloaded by Detective Markowitz from S2, right?
Yes, that's right.
S2 means suspect 2.
Yes, it does.
Let's move to that witness tracking sheet. You identify Alice Cifuentes as suspect 2.
Yes, I do. I realize my mistaken error in the name Alex versus Alice, yes, but it doesn't necessarily change anything about my witness tracking sheet.
But you identify Alex Cifuentes as suspect 2.
Yes, I do.
So, Ms. Cusack, let me make sure I'm getting this right. A suspect in this case, Alex Cifuentes, gave Detective Markowitz the screenshots being used today at trial.
Yes, I believe so. That's right.
Let's talk about some of the other suspects you identify in your witness tracking sheet. As we mentioned, you identify Ms. Cifuentes as suspect 2.
Yes.
And you identify Ms. Becker as suspect 1.
Yes, I do.
You also refer to Blair Rollins as suspect 3.
Yes, that's correct.
And you were here since the beginning of this trial.
Yes, I have been.
And you read Detective Markowitz's entire statement.
Yes, I believe so. I believe so.
And you were here for Detective Markowitz's entire testimony.
I was, yeah.
In Detective Markowitz's statement, nowhere does she indicate she had any other suspects other than Avery Becker.
Well, I believe what Markowitz was saying in her testimony is that Markowitz was...
Cusack, I didn't ask you to opine on what you believe Miss Markowitz meant. She didn't mention any other suspects other than Avery Becker in her statement, did she?
She didn't, but from what I heard from her statement, she was referencing other people, but she was more directed towards Avery Becker because she believed Avery Becker to have more of a motive.
Well, you were, like you said, you heard Detective Markowitz's entire testimony. And in that testimony, she said Avery Becker was her main and only suspect.
Yes, because she had reason to believe so from what I heard from her testimony, yes.
Right. Let's talk about some of the interviews you cataloged. In your witness information tracking sheet, you reference an interview with Avery Becker.
Yes, I do.
But Ms. Cusack, Detective Markowitz testified that she didn't interview Ms. Becker.
No, I don't specifically state who did the interviews in my witness tracking sheet, though I did find that there was an interview conducted with Taylor Perkins.
But not with Avery Becker. Let's talk about Brandon Digby. Who's Brandon Digby?
Brandon Digby was a former member of Colorado High School and is familiar with the other suspects on my witness tracking sheet.
And there was an interview with Mr. Digby.
Yes, there was.
And like you said, he's familiar with all 3 of the suspects that you identify.
Yes.
That interview report isn't here today, is it?
No, I did not add in the summary of Brandon Digby's report, but if you would like me to add any analysis on that and go beyond my witness statement, if you'd like me to, I could.
That's okay. And Mr. Digby isn't testifying today, is he?
No, he is not.
So that interview report and his testimony might have contained exculpatory evidence, but it's not here today, is it?
The summary was not placed in, but Brandon did have connections.
Sorry, what was that?
Brandon did have connections with all of the students on mock trial, and seeing as though Mackenzie Brackman was the coach for mock trial, it seems as though it would have been a mock trial student that would have had closer connections than Brandon Digby, who I don't believe was on the mock trial team.
Is it your testimony today that Brandon Digby wasn't on the mock trial teammate or wasn't a mock trial teammate?
It's not on my witness tracking sheet. I would assume that he's not, though, seeing as though it's not placed on the tracking sheet.
In your witness tracking sheet, Ms. Kuzak, you say that Brandon Digby is a CHS teammate. Correct?
That's correct.
Let's talk about Josiah Mitchell. He's the one who called 911, right?
That's right, yes.
There was an interview with Mr. Mitchell as well.
There was, yes.
That interview report isn't here today, is it?
No, it's not.
Detective Markowitz didn't testify about Josiah Mitchell, did she?
No, she did not.
Josiah Mitchell isn't testifying here today, is she?
No, she's not.
Let's talk about some of the prosecution's decisions. The murder of Mackenzie Brackman occurred on March 6th, 2020.
That's right, yes.
And Miss Becker was charged only 18 days later on March 23rd, 2020.
Yes, that's right.
But Miss Kuzak, you didn't receive any evidence in your evidence tracking sheet until June 2020, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzak. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Ms. Blake, do you have any redirect within the scope of the cross?
No, Your Honor, no redirect.
All right, thank you. Then the witness is excused. And we'll pause while the scorekeepers fill out their sheets, and the scorekeepers can tell me when they're done. Thank you, Tani. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Eve. All right. The prosecution may call its next witness.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls Alex Fuentes to the stand. Hello, Ms. Fuentes.
Hello.
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hello, my name is Alex Fuentes, and I was a junior at Colorado High School. Most people call it CHS. I was a member of the CHS mock trial team.
Thank you. Could you further describe your experience participating on mock trial?
Yeah, so I began mock trial my freshman year when my best friend Avery convinced me to try out. I really liked it, and I worked extremely hard during practices and tournaments. I had a great time.
And would you explain more about your relationship with your mock trial teammates?
Yeah, so I'd say my best friend on mock trial was Avery. We did it together through most of high school and spent most of our time hanging out through mock trial practices and tournaments, a few times at the Fry Shack. I had a really good time with Avery. However, as time went on, some issues developed within the team.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would ask that Avery Becker turn her camera on for purposes of identification.
Avery Becker, could you please turn on your camera? We'll deem Ms. Becker's camera to be on.
All right, let's see. And she can't turn her camera on at all for identification?
I don't know. Let's just keep it moving.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Oh, there we go.
There we go. All right.
Sorry, I was experiencing some issues with my device.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Fuentes, do you see Avery Becker on screen today?
I do, yes.
And could you describe how Avery Becker appears on screen?
It looks like she's wearing a black blazer and a white blouse.
Thank you. Your Honor, let the record reflect that Alex Fuentes has identified Avery Becker as the defendant in court today. Your Honor, I no longer need Avery Becker's presence on screen.
All right, the record will so reflect.
Thank you. Mr. Fuentes, you referenced earlier some issues within the team. Could you describe those further, please?
Yeah, so for starters, we had some trouble getting Avery to take mock trial seriously. Mock trial came very naturally to Avery, so she got away with not putting in as much effort and frequently came to practices late and unprepared.
And how did you observe how Avery's behavior that you've described affected the team's coach, Mr. Brackman?
I saw that this really bothered Coach Brackman. Coach Brackman was a really good lawyer and cared so much for our team. So I understand why he seemed frustrated with the fact that Avery slacked off.
And how did you observe that behavior affect the team?
Now, I can't say how it affected the rest of the team, but personally, it did irk me to see Avery succeed without much preparation. I liked Avery a lot and I worked really hard at mock trial. It was my passion. I didn't appreciate the way my teammates and coaches were affected by Avery's antics.
And would you mind telling us about some of the roles that Avery played on mock trial?
Yeah, I would say Avery played a witness role as she did an attorney and was equally as skilled at both. Avery had this amazing ability to make things up on the witness stand, so no cross-examining lawyer could ruffle Avery. She could make any listeners believe any part of her testimony was completely true.
And Mr. Fuentes, did you ever see any interactions between Mr. Brackman and Avery Becker?
So I remember one specific time Avery was late to practice for the upteenth time. Coach Brackman had enough of it and kicked Avery off of A team, bumping them down to B team. Avery then manipulated her way back onto A team by asking Taylor Perkins to quit with her. So our whole team was really upset when Avery was forced back onto A team.
Mm-hmm. And was that the end of their dispute, Mr. Brackman's and Avery Becker's?
No, so at regionals, Avery won some awards, and Coach Brackman came up to talk to Avery at the next practice and basically explained the difference between good showmanship and good lawyering, and what Avery did was completely unprofessional. And Avery was furious, so Avery went out and vandalized Brackman's car.
Your Honor, Rule 404B1, this is a improper use of a wrong or other act.
Response, Your Honor.
Response.
Counsel, could you clarify as to what the objection was to specifically, which part of her testimony?
The response to your question, counsel.
Okay. Pursuant to Rule 404B2, Mr. Fuentes is testifying to something that goes to the defendant's identity, and it doesn't really go to his character evidence, and it doesn't suggest that he acted in accordance with a specific character trait.
Response, Your Honor.
Ms. Varick, could you explain to me why this testimony, which describes a series of actions, if I understand it, is character evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. This is not an objection to character evidence. This is a improper use of a wrong or other act, which is also falling under the 404B1 objection.
Ms. Lockley, do you have a response?
Yes, Your Honor, I do. Mr. Fuentes isn't offering this evidence to go to the defendant's character, but rather like a repeated action and his identity more.
Response, Your Honor?
No, I don't think so. Because what I hear is a description of an action taken by the defendant, and it is not offered to prove the character or a characteristic of the defendant, which is what is prohibited by 404B. It is instead a statement of a series of events, that he appeared angry, that he took a marker, and that he wrote on the decedent's car, which is not intended to prove character. So that's overruled. Go ahead, Ms. Lockley.
Mr. Fuentes, after the incident with Mr. Brackman's car, did you hear from Avery again?
So shortly after Avery vandalized Brackman's car, she texted me basically asking if I could speak with Coach Brackman and see if I could convince him to let her back on the team. So I agreed to talk to Coach Brackman and see if that would be possible.
Mhm. And what did Coach Brackman respond?
I said that Coach Brackman would not let Avery back on the team. After what happened, I didn't think he would budge.
And did you tell Avery this?
Yes, I texted Avery back and told her, and Avery said, if Brackman thinks he was upset about what happened to his car, wait till he sees what I do to his house. I texted Avery back, asking her what she meant, and Avery said she planned to go to Coach Brackman's house and trash it.
And after this text interaction with Avery, what happened?
After that, I heard about the passing of our beloved coach.
And did the police contact you after Mr. Brackman's death?
Yes, I got a call from a police detective asking.
We have a time statement.
I think that myself and the other timer have a discrepancy in time. I have us having like about 1 minute left in the time.
Your Honor, I have time from Miss Trembeth was stopped timing while we were waiting for Miss Becker to show up, which is not allowed. And so I continued timing and I now have time.
Okay, well, what I'm going to allow is 30 seconds, split the difference. And can you wrap it up in 30 seconds, Ms. Lockley?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Ms. Fuentes, finally, how would you describe your relationship with Avery Becker up until the murder of Mackenzie Brackman?
Avery and I were great friends up until the time of Brackman's murder. To be honest, I really miss our friendship. We cared about each other so much and wanted the best for each other. Now, I know there's a rumor going around that Avery and I were somehow rivals. This is totally false. Avery and I were great teammates and pushed each other to be better. So whatever people say, Avery and I were friends.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Ms. Vierick. You have cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Fuentes.
Good evening.
Let's talk about your mock trial experience. You were close friends with Avery Becker.
Yes, I was.
And you believed you were equal with her when it came to mock trial.
Yes, I believe we were equally as skilled.
Yes, she often came late to practice.
Yes, she came to practice late on multiple occasions.
But you were always prepared for practice.
I was. Mock trial was something I was super passionate about and I put a lot of effort into.
Yes, but Avery was the one who won awards for her performances.
Yeah, Avery was really good at making things up on the fly. So she was really good at mock trial.
This irked you.
Yeah, it wasn't fun to see someone succeed when I put in so much effort.
Later on, you asked Coach Brackman why he put up with Avery's behavior.
Yeah, I asked him that.
You even went so far as to ask why he kept her on the team, didn't you?
I did. I didn't really appreciate the way that Avery treated our teammates.
Now, let's talk about Avery's track record on the team. She was demoted to B team.
Yes.
You believed she was rightfully demoted.
Yeah, I mean, if someone's not putting in the effort, I don't think that they should be on A team.
But she was able to get back on the A team.
Yes, she was.
And then she was kicked off the team entirely.
Yes, after the incident when she vandalized Coach Brackman's car.
You believed the team was better off without Avery Becker.
I mean, yeah, if she wasn't willing to put in the effort and...
Yes, I know you would like to explain, but my question was, you believed the team was better off without Avery. Your answer was a yes.
Objection, Your Honor. I would ask
Yeah.
that counsel let Ms. Fuentes finish her answer to each question.
Ms. Vierick?
The witness answered my question. She gave a yes. I was just clarifying that the question was already answered.
Your Honor, I would argue that that question could be answered with more than just a yes or no. And so she was just explaining.
Well, I think that Ms. Varick is attempting to control the witness. The witness always wants to add some more. There's an inherent tension on that in cross-examination. I think that Ms. Varick is doing all right, and I'll overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, you believed the team was better off without Avery Becker.
Yeah, you could say so.
And you were excited to take on larger roles now that your best friend was off the team.
Yeah, I was sad that she was off the team, but I think it was probably for the best.
Let's talk about the text messages. Now, like we talked about earlier, Avery was kicked off the team due to an incident with Mr. Brackman's car.
Correct, yes.
And after this, you received texts from who you say is Avery Becker.
I did, yes.
And she was begging for help to get back on the team.
Yes, that's why Avery texted me.
So you went and made an impassioned plea to Mr. Brackman.
I did, yes.
But this plea didn't help, did it?
No, I mean, Avery vandalized his Porsche 911. I didn't think that he would budge, really.
Yes, so you texted Avery Becker and said Mr. Brackman isn't backing down. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
Now you should have access to Exhibit 14, so please look back at this. Starting at the 5th bubble down, Ms. Becker continues to ask for help.
Yes.
Afterwards, you just say, I guess I could try.
Yes, I did say that.
You don't say, I will help, do you?
No, I said, I guess I could try.
And nowhere within these texts does it say, Mr. Brackman isn't backing down.
No, I didn't think that that would happen.
Now let's talk about how you handled these text messages. Mr. Brackman was your idol.
Yes.
He was a mentor to you.
Yes, God rest his soul. I miss him dearly.
But when you received direct threats aimed at Mr. Brackman, you didn't show them to him, did you?
No.
But when Detective Markowitz called you, you immediately offered it up as evidence.
Yeah, I had something.
For an interview.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you please repeat the question?
Yes. So you went down to the station for an interview.
Yes, I did.
You didn't bring your phone to this interview, did you?
No, I totally spaced and left it on the charger.
So Detective Markowitz told you you could send screenshots.
Yes.
You didn't send those screenshots the second you got home after just being interviewed about a murder.
No, I sent them the next day.
Yes, you waited until the next day to send them.
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. The time for everyone having expired, the witness is excused. The scorekeepers will complete their sheets and let me know when they're done. Tawny, thank you. Eve, thank you. Stephen, thank you. All right, does the prosecution have any additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution rests.
All right, thank you. Then defense, are you going to put on a case?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Mr. Perkins to the stand.
All right, Mr. Perkins, I remind you that you remain under the oath that you took at the beginning of these proceedings. Ms. Proctor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Good evening, Mr. Perkins.
Good evening.
My name is Madeline Proctor. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name's Taylor Perkins. That's Perkins.
Mr. Perkins, where did you go to high school?
I went to Colorado High School, CHS as we called it.
Did you know a Miss Avery Becker during your time there?
Of course I did. Avery was one of my best friends all throughout high school. We had classes together, we hung out after school and played video games. We even did mock trial together.
Let's talk about your mock trial team. What was Miss Becker's role?
She was an attorney on the team, and might I add, the best attorney. She was like a stand-up comedian. She could make things up on the fly like nobody's business. I would really call her unstoppable, but like she did have like one weakness. She was really bad at memorizing her script.
What about the rest of the team?
The rest of the team was also really good. I mean, not as good as Avery, but personally, I think we were the favorites to win state, just as long as arguments on the team weren't getting in the way.
What do you mean by arguments on the team?
So Avery would show up sometimes late and unprepared to practice, and coach hated that more than anything. And so practices almost always started with the confrontation between those two, and it really kind of affected the whole team.
Did those arguments ever escalate?
They did actually. There was one time where coach got so mad that he demoted Avery to B team. This was completely unfair. Think about it this way. It would be like the Rockies demoting Nolan Arenado to the minor leagues. It just didn't make sense.
So did you do anything to help remedy the situation?
I did. So I would equate my position on the team to like a utility infielder. I could help the team out where I could, but I wasn't the star like Avery. So I stepped down from the team so that the team would have no choice but to take Avery back.
And did Coach Brackman allow Miss Becker back onto the A team?
He did, which was great because a week later at regionals, the team advanced to state and did really good. And Avery won Best Attorney Award and Best Closing Argument. I'm not surprised.
That's great. And Mr. Perkins, let's talk about March 6th now. What were you doing that morning?
That morning, I actually got to sleep in because I had first period off. And actually, so did Avery. We both had first period off that day. So, like always when that happens, Avery came and picked me up for school. You know, we got to save gas money somehow.
Where did you two go?
So we were on our way to school, and I mentioned that Avery wasn't responding to my texts, and I thought it was kind of rude. And that's when Avery told me that she had lost her phone.
Your Honor, hearsay.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
We are not offering the fact that Miss Becker lost her phone realized that she lost her phone on that morning for the truth of the matter asserted. Miss Becker can tell you when she lost her phone and when she realized it. Mr. Perkins is simply testifying this to show that that was the reason why they spent the entire day going to search for the phone at the mall and the Fry Shack on March 6th.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes.
This evidence goes to whether Mr. Becker had his phone or not, which is part of the truth. Oh, I'm sorry. Miss Becker had her phone or not, which goes to the truth of the matter as to whether she was where it was when it was tracked.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, you may, Ms. Proctor.
Again, we are not offering this under 801 for the truth of the matter asserted. That is something that Ms. Becker can testify to, but at least to Mr. Perkins' knowledge, he will testify to that the phone was not there, and that he does not need her statement that the phone was not there to know that. That's why they spent the entire day searching for it, which he can testify to.
Well, I think what the statement is what the question is, ask the witness to recite what happened in the interaction between himself and the defendant. And as such, that's not for the truth of the matter that's expressed, and therefore I will overrule the objection.
Mr. Perkins, I'll ask again, where were you two going on the morning of March 6th?
We were actually on our way to school when I mentioned that Avery wasn't responding to my text. And, you know, being seniors and senioritis in full effect, we decided to skip school that day and go look for her phone.
What locations did you go to specifically?
We went to the mall and the fry shack. Those were the places that we were the day before. We thought retrace our steps.
Why would you go to the mall and the fry shack the day before?
Well, the day before, Avery was kicked off the team for good. And I thought, let's go to the fry shack and try and cheer her up.
Did you run into anyone you knew while you were at the mall or the fry shack the day prior?
We did actually. While we were at the fry shack, a couple of the members of the mock trial team showed up, which was really bad timing.
Why was it bad timing?
Well, Avery had just been kicked off the team, and I really remember Alex Fuentes coming up and trying to console Avery, but it just came off in this passive aggressive way, and it didn't help the situation at all. In fact, Avery got angry and just went to the bathroom to try and cool off. And I think she even left her phone sitting on the table.
Just to be clear, where was the last place that you saw Miss Becker's phone?
It was then when she got up and went to the bathroom and left it on the table.
All right, Mr. Perkins, let's talk about someone else now. Blair Rollins. How do you know him?
Blair Rollins was another student at CHS. I saw him around campus and I had a couple classes with him.
Did you know him well?
No, I didn't know him well at all. Actually, I almost tried to avoid him when I could.
Why was that?
He was just kind of creepy. I think everyone at the school would agree that he was someone you almost wanted to stay away from.
All right, do you know anything about the relationship between Blair Rollins and Coach Brackman?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. This witness can't testify to the relationship of two separate people.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
This witness does have knowledge based on reputation around the school and based on his personal knowledge of attending CHS and knowing Coach Brackman and knowing Blair Rollins of their relationship, the same way that you could see two people who were best friends or two people who didn't like each other and never talked and share what you had seen them and how you would.
Well, I think you're getting pretty far in the weeds there. I think, Ms. Lockley, what the question was, whether the witness knows anything about the relationship between these two individuals. The question, therefore, doesn't ask for speculation. That's probably yes or no. It may be later whether that there is not sufficient foundation for him to have an opinion or to have an observation of what that relationship is. But as of now, the question only asks, does he know? So we're going to find out. So I'll overrule the objection.
So, Mr. Perkins, do you know anything about Mr. Brackman and Mr. Rollins' relationship?
I do, actually.
How do you know anything about their relationship?
There was a bunch of rumors passed around school, and they were confirmed that Coach Brackman actually defended Blair Rollins' father in a murder trial.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. The witness doesn't have proper personal knowledge to testify on the trial of Blair Rollins' father.
Response, Your Honor? Once again, once again, Your Honor, the witness is relying on the reputation and what he had garnered from that reputation around the school to form his opinion on the relationship between Coach Brackman and Mr. Rollins.
Well, if you're asking if you're making this inquiry to determine the reputation of the person in question, then that is not germane to the relationship between the two. It could be a good person, a bad person, it could be any kind of person at all. And it doesn't affect whether there is a relationship between the person and the coach. So
yes, Your Honor.
In that way, you have not established that there is a foundation for this witness to testify. You have established that there are rumors, and he said something about those were confirmed. So how is that confirmed?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Perkins, what were those rumors?
The rumors were that Coach Brackman defended Blair Rollins' father, and he was sentenced to life in prison.
I see. And do you know anything about the relationship between Blair Rollins and Miss Cifuentes?
Yeah, Blair Rollins and Alex Fuentes got along probably the two best I've seen. I mean,
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. This witness hasn't mentioned anything that he specifically witnessed or any of his specific personal knowledge, and he's just testifying to what he thought that their relationship was.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
So under Rule 701, his opinion on the relationship just has to be rationally based on his perception. And Mr. Perkins has been at mock trial practices and on the team with both of those people for years. So he can't speculate to his own thoughts about what he witnessed and his own impression of how they acted around him.
Well, I think that the testimony that was coming in before the objection was he was about to explain what he had observed. And for that reason, the objection is overruled.
Mr. Perkins, what to your knowledge was the relationship between Ms. Fuentes and Blair Rollins?
just from what I could see from them talking and like communicating with each other, they seem like pretty good friends. I mean, not best friends like Avery and I, but pretty good friends.
And when was the last time that you saw Blair Rollins?
I can't remember the last time I saw Blair Rollins. It must have been before March 6th, though.
All right, going back to March 6th, was there ever a moment in time when you and Miss Becker were apart?
No, we were together the entire day looking for her phone.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Ms. Lockley, do you have cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you may. Yes, you may.
Good afternoon, Mr. Perkins.
Good afternoon.
You went to Colorado High School.
I did. All 4 years.
And at Colorado High School, you participated in the mock trial program.
I did. It was actually really fun, especially with Avery on the team.
And you were coached by Mackenzie Brackman.
I was.
But you and Mr. Becker didn't always agree with Mr. Brackman.
No, most of the time we did not agree, actually.
And you and Miss Becker thought that he was a mediocre coach.
He was a great guy. He was a mediocre coach, but he was a great person.
And yet you also described him as a mediocre lawyer.
I don't know exactly how good he was as a lawyer, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how good he was as a lawyer.
Did you describe him as mediocre in your witness statement?
As a mediocre coach or a mediocre lawyer?
Mediocre lawyer.
Well, like I said, I'm guessing he was mediocre.
So you state in your witness statement that Mr. Brackman and Miss Becker's disagreements were their little feud, correct?
They often got at each other like over little things.
And you described it as their little feud, correct?
Yeah, it was their little feud.
Mm-hmm. And you state that Ms. Becker drove Brackman crazy.
Objection, Your Honor. Under Rule 613, this is improper impeachment, as she is referring to the witness statement and not just asking the witness what their actual testimony is here today.
Your Honor, I'll rephrase my question.
All right, thank you.
Miss Becker drove Brackman crazy, correct?
It really seemed like it. I mean, sometimes you could see the steam coming out of his ears.
Mm-hmm. And you never really got involved in their arguments, correct?
I try to stay out of it the best I could. I mean, I don't like to get involved in the arguments. It's just not my thing.
Mm-hmm. But these arguments did bother Miss Becker.
Oh, they bothered pretty much everyone. I mean, think about it. Before every practice, there's an argument. It kind of puts off the whole team.
And Miss Becker could be rash, correct?
I mean, sometimes, but most of the time she was very calm and collected.
And Miss Becker had an inflated ego as well.
I mean, I don't know if I would say inflated ego. I mean, she was sometimes full of herself, but.
Is it your statement in court today that you would say that he doesn't have an inflated ego, Mr. Perkins?
He does have an inflated ego. I don't know how much of that is just me being her friend and seeing it all the time versus just how she actually was.
Thank you. All right, so Miss Becker then decided to enact what you called pranks on Mr. Brackman, correct?
Yes.
And after one argument with Miss Becker, Mr. Brackman got heated.
Well, there was one argument. Actually, Avery showed up unprepared as ever.
Thank you. He then demoted Miss Becker to the B team, correct?
Objection,
which
Your
was
Honor. I would like to ask Ms. Lockley to allow my witness to answer the question. He did not say anything about whether or not Coach Brackman did get heated.
Ms. Lockley?
Your Honor, I'll just ask the question again.
All right, thank you.
So after one argument with Ms. Becker, you say that Mr. Brackman got heated.
There was one argument in particular because Avery showed up the most unprepared she had ever been.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Brackman was heated?
He was pretty heated that day.
Mm-hmm. And he then demoted Ms. Becker to the B team, correct?
Which was completely unfair, but he did.
Mm-hmm. And after this, you stepped down from the A team.
So I wanted to make sure that Avery got back onto the A team where she belongs. So I did step down.
So the intent of you stepping down from A team was so that Ms. Becker could be back on the A team.
Exactly, where she belonged.
I'm sorry, Mr. Perkins, I didn't hear the last thing that you said.
I said that's where she belonged, on the A team. She was the best attorney on the team, and the A team is for the best attorneys.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'd like to move on and discuss the night on which Ms. Becker vandalized Mr. Brackman's car. So Ms. Becker and Mr. Brackman had gotten into another argument, correct?
I wasn't actually there at that point. I was off the team, so I don't know exactly what happened, but Avery told me about it, and they did get into another argument.
All right. And Avery vandalizing Mr. Brackman's car was her way of letting off some steam, correct?
I don't know about letting off some steam. I mean...
Objection, Your Honor. Objection, Your Honor. This is under improper character evidence, crimes, wrongs, or other acts under Rule 404B, as was previously ruled on. The vandalism itself is not improper character evidence, but the character trait of doing that to let off some steam or having tendency to do that to release anger is being used by the prosecution for a propensity to act in accordance with that on March 6th, when they claim she was already mad at Coach Brackman.
Ms. Lockley?
This is not being offered to suggest that Ms. Becker acted in accordance with that trait on March 6th. It is rather being offered to show her identity under Rule 404B2, which is an exception to character evidence.
Is there an issue as to identity?
Yes, her urge to let off steam.
Response, Your Honor?
No, I'm just trying to figure out what the argument is. There's no question that Ms. Becker was the person who vandalized the car, the person who is the defendant in this case, the person you're trying to convict, right?
Correct, Your Honor.
So how is this line of questioning relevant to proving identity?
Was
Ms.
that a
Lockley?
question for me, Your Honor?
Yes, it was.
It's proving his identity in that he's she's has a poor temper and reacts poorly to
A temper is not the same thing as identity. You could be a schlub sitting in a corner and you'd still be you.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Temper isn't part of it.
Having a temper is not an identity.
Okay.
You can prove identity saying person A is person A. And person A maybe have a temper, may not have a temper.
Okay.
That doesn't have anything to do with identity.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll answer my question.
Okay.
All right. Now, Miss Becker vandalized Mr. Brackman's car to freak him out, correct?
With a dry erase marker, which was what she thought it was.
Your Honor.
Yes, Ms. Proctor.
This is the same issue under Rule 404B1 as it trying to freak him out and having a propensity to freak him out is the exact same thing. Trying to get a rise out of Coach Brackman is being used to say that she acted in accordance. Like if she hypothetically went to Coach Brackman's house on March 6th to vandalize it to freak him out, that is acting in accordance.
Response.
Well, I don't think that. I think there's a misconception of what character is. That this is not attempting to prove character, and this goes back to the other objection, the other line of questioning, whether what he was trying to do or what she was trying to do, if she was doing anything at all, is not a matter of character. And the entire line is a little suspect because the witness says that he wasn't there to see what was going on. So I'm lost on the foundation here, Ms. Lockley, of how what you're trying to prove and how you're going to get it in through this witness.
Your Honor, I'm clarifying how Mr. Perkins described Avery's attitude towards the vandalism situation.
All right, then you need some foundation to
Okay, I'll move on to
establish
another line of questioning.
how he knows that.
Okay, I'll move on to another line of questioning.
Okay.
All right, so after Ms. Becker vandalized Mr. Brackman's car, he was kicked off the team permanently, correct?
Yeah, she was, which really stunk.
Thank you. Now I'd like to move on and discuss the night you and Miss Becker went to the Fry Shack. So on this night, you say that you swung by your house.
This is March 5th.
Yes.
Yes, we did go to my house first. We actually played video games for a while.
And then you went to eat at the Fry Shack.
Yeah, like I said on direct, I wanted to like lighten Avery's mood. I mean, she did just get kicked off the team, which did stink.
And at the Fry Shack, you say that Miss Becker got upset.
Alex Cifuentes came up and started trying to console her, but it didn't come off right. And it sounded almost like mean, like passive aggressively. And she just went off to the bathroom. She wanted to take a break from Alex Fuentes and cool down.
Thank you. And you say that when she stormed off to the bathroom, she left her phone on the table, correct?
I think she did. That's the last place I think I can remember seeing it.
And this is weird because, as you described, Miss Becker's phone was like her third kidney, correct?
The nice thing about a third kidney is you only need two, or even one, actually.
Thank you. While Miss Becker was in the bathroom, you spoke with Alex Cifuentes.
I did, just a little bit.
And you expressed your urge to punch Alex in the face, correct?
He was being a little annoying then. Luckily, I didn't punch him in the face, but he was being a little annoying then.
And his little annoyance would urge you to punch him in the face?
Well, you know, when like little annoyances like keep building up, and it's just like, then you just, but luckily I didn't punch him.
Thank you. I'd now like to discuss with you the events that followed Mr. Brackman's death. When you heard about Mr. Brackman being killed, you and Avery talked about it, correct?
We did.
And after Miss Becker's lawyers called you, you talked to Avery again.
Yeah, I did. I mean, we're best friends. Of course, we're going to talk almost every day.
So it's true, Mr. Perkins, that you spoke with Avery at least twice about Mr. Brackman's murder before you spoke with the police.
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. We spoke for the first time, we mentioned Mr. Brackman's death, but it wasn't like we were specifically talking about that the entire conversation. It came up and we couldn't really avoid it.
So you did speak about it twice before you spoke with police?
Well, it came up twice. It wasn't like we were like, we were pretty sad, actually.
Thank you. And Miss Becker told you that Blair Rowlands might be involved in the case, correct?
You know, I would have never thought in a million years that he would be, but it makes perfect sense.
Thank you. So it wasn't a lawyer who told you that Blair Rowlands was involved in the case, correct?
No, I don't remember a lawyer ever talking to me about Blair Rowlands.
And it wasn't a police detective who told you that Blair Rowlands might be involved in the case, correct?
No, it was Avery who first brought it up. I mean, but like I said, it made perfect sense.
So to clarify, it was Avery Becker, who's on trial for murder, who told you that Blair Rowlands was involved in the case, correct?
Just because she told me about Blair Rowlands doesn't change the fact that we were together that entire day.
Thank you. That wasn't my question. And finally, you suggest that Alex Fuentes gave Blair Rowlands Mr. Becker's phone, correct?
I mean, it's a possibility. See, the last place I remember the phone was at the Fry Shack where Alex Fuentes was. I mean, it's a possibility.
And you didn't witness this happen, correct?
No, I didn't witness it happen, but like I said, it's a possibility.
So nor did you witness Mr. Fuentes give Mr. Rowlands Mr. Becker's phone, correct?
No, I would not have been there. Like I said, I tend to avoid, especially Blair Rowlands. I wouldn't have been there with them doing that.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Proctor, do you have any redirect within the scope of the cross?
I do, Your Honor. Mr. Perkins, let's start with why you stepped down from the mock trial team. Why did you?
I thought it would be in the best interest for the team to have Avery back. Like I said, she was like the Nolan Arenado of the team. She was a star, and she really helped the team out. Even if the team wasn't on board with her being back on it, she definitely helped them.
All right, and why did you consider Blair Rollins to be a reasonable fit for what happened on March 6th?
Well, I heard about his dad being sentenced to life in prison when Coach Brackman defended him. And also, he was missing from school on March 6th. I mean, these things start to add up.
Did Ms. Becker ever tell you any of that?
Well, I mean, she told me part of it, but I also heard from other people that the exact same thing. It only confirmed what Avery said.
All right, and could you explain why Blair or Alex giving Rollins the phone is a possibility?
Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Perkins is not a police detective, nor is he an investigator. He is a lay witness, and he can't make opinion testimony on what he thought could have happened.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
So it is a lay witness lay witness opinions under Rule 701 are based on the witness's impression and rationally based impression, which includes the logic of how he got there, such as things that he could testify to about on March 5th having Miss Fuentes at the Fry Shack. This is all rationally based on his perception and goes to his lay witness opinion, which is not barred on opining on the ultimate issue.
Well, under Rule 701A, a lay witness may offer an opinion if it is rationally based upon his or her perception, not impression. And what you're asking for is speculation. So the objection is sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Perkins, what did you see on March 5th that led you to suspect something may have been going on between Blair Rollins and Miss Fuentes?
So on March 5th, Avery left her phone sitting at the table at the Fry Shack. Alex Fuentes was standing near her when she left, talking to her. And I don't remember seeing the phone after that. So just looking at that, and also the fact that Blair Rollins and Alex Fuentes were pretty good friends, I just kind of jumped to that conclusion.
All right. And Mr. Perkins, on March 6th, were you with Miss Becker the entire day?
I was with her the entire day. Other than like the 2 minutes she was in the bathroom. I didn't follow her in because that would be weird. But she'd have to be like the Flash to go from the bathroom to Coach Brackman's house and back to the bathroom at the mall. It's just not possible.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lockley. Do you have any recross within the scope of the redirect?
No, I do not, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Then, Mr. Perkins, you are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And we'll take a second or two to allow the scoring people like Tony to complete their job. Okay, Stephen, thank you. Eve, thank you. All right, defense, do you have an additional witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Professor Blake Van Owen to the stand.
Mr. Owen, I remind you that you remain under the oath that you took at the beginning of this proceeding. Go ahead, Mr. Powell.
Good evening, Professor. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good evening.
Mr. Powell.
My name is.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, did you say something?
Well, we're having a little technical interference here where you're frozen and we're talking over each other. Go ahead.
Good evening, Professor Van Owen. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Blake Van Owen. That's spelled Vanowen.
Let's talk about your professional career. Tell us about how you got involved in criminal justice.
I've always had a passion for criminal justice. That's why I became a police officer. As a result, I joined the Aurora Police Department in 2005.
Are you currently a police officer?
Heavens no. It turns out that my definition and their definition of criminal justice were significantly different. So I left, so I could pursue education and investigation.
Tell us about your experience in education.
I obtained my master's degree in criminal justice from Ashford University in 2014. Shortly thereafter, in 2015, I began lecturing students at the University of Colorado on social justice and police practices.
Tell us about your experience in investigation.
I've been a private investigator for several years now. I like to consider myself as a check on the power of police.
Professor Van Owen, have you ever testified in a court of law?
I've consulted as an expert in over 100 trials. I regularly act as an expert in both federal and state courts.
In those courts, in what fields were you recognized as an expert witness?
I was accepted as an expert in crime scene reconstruction 8 times, cell tower analysis 5 times, and general police procedures 12 times.
Your Honor, the defense requests the court to recognize Professor Van Owen as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and police procedure. Pursuant to Rule 702, his skill, knowledge, education, experience, and training have all been shown, and his testimony will assist the jury in understanding the evidence.
Ms. Blake, do you have any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, then Mr. Professor Van Owen is accepted as an expert witness in the fields of crime scene reconstruction, police procedure, and cell tower technology. Go ahead.
Professor Van Owen, how did you start your preparation for today's case?
I was retained in this case as a private investigator by the defense to perform an analysis on prosecution experts and their reports.
Let's talk about your review of Kyle Kuzak's report. What problems do you have with her report?
I know Kyle Kuzak, and there's no problem with who she is. The problem stems from her investigation being solely based off the detective's interpretation of evidence.
Let's talk about Detective Markowitz. What problems do you have with her report?
Frankly, Mr. Powell, Detective Markowitz suffers from a case of confirmation bias in her investigation.
What is confirmation bias?
It is the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs. In other words, it's like forcing a puzzle piece to fit in the incorrect puzzle.
How does Detective Markowitz fall victim to this?
Detective Markowitz developed a preconceived notion that Miss Becker was the only suspect in today's case. She only focused on and noted evidence that would implicate Miss Becker while ignoring evidence that would exculpate her.
What are some examples of this?
First, Detective Markowitz's assumptions on the cell tower data. Second, the validity of the text message screenshots. And third, Detective Markowitz's lack of an investigation on Blair Rollins.
Let's start with those cell tower reports. How is this an example of confirmation bias?
Before Detective Markowitz pulled any of her cell tower data, she had her suspect, and that was Miss Becker. You see, earlier mentioned was that Avery Becker was the unstoppable force. However, Detective Markowitz was the unstoppable force. Instead of following the data to their natural stories, Detective Markowitz tried to force the data to fit her story, just like a puzzle piece in the wrong puzzle.
How so?
You have to understand that cell tower data is not like a GPS. Cell tower data is ample in finding the general location of a phone. However, it is impossible for it to pinpoint the exact location of that phone. For example, even if the phone was in the cell tower data, it could have been in a 37.7 square mile radius of that tower.
Let's shift gears. Let's talk about the screenshots of the text messages. How is this an example of confirmation bias?
You see, there are two aspects of confirmation bias within Detective Markowitz's investigation of the screenshots. Detective Markowitz fails both on identifying from where the messages were sent and who sent them.
Why don't we know who sent them or where they were sent from?
The name on an iPhone can be easily manipulated. To understand where the iPhone is or where the messages are from, you have to actually download the cell phone data. Furthermore, to identify the location from where the messages were sent, you again have to download the data on that phone. Detective Markowitz is an expert in downloading cell phone data, yet she didn't download any of the data of this phone at all. Instead, she looked at the messages and took them for face value so that she could easily confirm her existing beliefs.
Let's talk about Blair Rollins. Who is she?
Blair Rollins was a student at Colorado High School.
How is she related to this case?
Blair Rollins' father, Jonathan Rollins, was convicted of first-degree murder. The Rollins family depended upon Mr. Brackman to defend Jonathan in court. However, Jonathan was sentenced to life in prison. After this, Jonathan actually made a threat.
What did he yell at Mr. Brackman?
He yelled, "I'm going to get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do."
Is there any important information about Blair Rollins in that hearing?
Blair Rollins actually heard this threat. Furthermore, Blair Rollins has a stronger motive than Avery Becker simply being kicked off the mock trial team.
What other evidence did you find about Blair Rollins?
Blair Rollins was missing from school on the day of the murder. So if Blair were to blame Mr. Brackman for his father's sentencing, then this gives him the perfect opportunity to kill Mr. Brackman.
Now that we know who Blair Rollins is, how is Detective Markowitz's lack of an investigation into him an example of confirmation bias?
Detective Markowitz bases her investigation on 4 facts: a motive, a threat, a phone in the cell tower arc, and a missing person. The reality is, each of these facts is true of Blair Rollins. Rollins had a motive. Rollins made a threat. Rollins' house was in the cell tower arc, and Rollins was missing from school and is still missing today. The detective did not follow up on Blair Rollins because she thought that she completed her puzzle. You see, the puzzle box was the immovable object in today's case. If the pieces of the puzzle did not fit Detective Markowitz's picture, then she just ignored them. This is confirmation bias, and this is a failed investigation.
Thank you, Professor Van Owen. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. You have cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Professor Van Owen, I'd like to establish a few things before we begin. You never went to the crime scene, correct?
Good evening, and no, I did not go to the crime scene. My job is a private investigator. I'm not allowed at the crime scene.
And you never handled any of the evidence?
No, again, by the time that I was hired in today's case, all the evidence had already been packed up and cleaned up.
And you never spoke to Avery Becker?
No, I did not.
You never spoke to Taylor Perkins?
No, I did not. I did review their statements, however.
You did not speak to Detective Markowitz?
No, again, this is all not a part of my job.
Nor did you speak to Miss Kuzak?
I have met Ms. Kuzak before.
Pardon me, you did not speak to Ms. Kuzak in regards to this case?
Oh, no.
And you never spoke to Alex Cifuentes?
No, I did not. These are all tasks of the prosecution.
Right. Thank you. I'd like to move on. Speaking of the prosecution, you've never testified for the prosecution, correct?
Yes, I get this question a lot. You see, if the prosecution wanted to hire me, I would gladly accept, but they never wanted to hire me. So no, I've never testified on behalf of them.
And you're being paid to testify here, correct?
I'm being paid for my time, not my testimony.
Right. And you mentioned that you have been paid just under $7,000 for this case, right?
Yes, I'm being paid just like you, Ms. Blake.
And you get paid $225 per hour.
That's correct, depending on the case.
Thank you. Your Honor, I ask the court to make judicial notice pursuant to Rule 201 of the fact that 7,000 divided by 225 is just above 31.
I will accept your math.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Now, Mr. Vano, you only worked 31 hours on this case, correct?
That is all the time I needed to understand that clearly Detective Markowitz's investigation was failed.
Thank you. I'd like to move on. Now, you talk
You're welcome.
about Blair Rollins in your witness statement, correct?
I do, yes.
And you talk about how Blair Rollins and Avery Becker had the same general height and build.
That's correct.
Mr. Van Owen, have you ever seen Blair Rollins in person?
Not in person, however, I have reviewed yearbook photos.
Oh, so you've seen pictures of the two of them standing next to each other?
No, I've seen pictures of Blair Rollins. Furthermore, Detective Markowitz actually identified the build and size of Avery Becker.
Now, you also talk about the court recording that features Blair Rollins' father, correct?
That's correct.
And Jonathan Rollins was being sentenced to life in prison.
The recording is after he was sentenced.
Right, and you just testified that Jonathan Rollins said, "I'll get you back," correct?
I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do.
Now, you say in your witness statement that Jonathan Rollins said that Mr. Brackman was going to die, correct?
I understand that. I did say that in my witness statement, and that's not what he said in real life. However, my main concern is that this is a threat that Detective Markowitz did not follow up on.
So you consider someone dying and getting someone back to be completely the same?
Or Jonathan Rollins certainly wasn't planning to play a prank on Mr. Brackman from the tone of his voice.
But you signed your witness statement, correct?
I did, yes.
And you signed that witness statement knowing that you were obligated to update it if there were any mistakes.
That is correct.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Powell. Do you have any redirect within the scope of the cross?
I do, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Professor Van Owen, why don't you testify for the prosecution?
Like I said before, if the prosecution wanted to hire me, I would gladly accept, and I would testify for them. However, they have not contacted me for me to testify for them. Furthermore, the police already have experts provided to them for free. They would not go out of their way to hire someone else.
And Professor Van Owen, why did you say that Jonathan Rollins said Brackman is going to die in your statement?
Again, based off the tone of his voice, it indicates Jonathan Rollins wanted to get Brackman back.
And did the detective investigate any of this?
No, it is extremely unfortunate. It's actually reasons like this why I left the department in the first place. There's a clear threat here, and Detective Markowitz did not follow up on it at all.
Thank you, Professor Van Owen. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. Do you have any recross within the scope of the redirect?
I do, Your Honor. Now, Professor, you just testified that it was the tone of Jonathan Rollins' voice that made you concerned. Is that correct?
Yes, have you heard the recording? He said, "I'm going to get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do."
Now, once again, I would like to reiterate that you say in your witness statement that Jonathan Rollins said that Brackman was going to die, correct?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And you didn't consider actually putting the correct quote in your witness statement and mentioning the tone?
I did not put the correct quote. However, I did review Exhibit 22. Exhibit 22 is available, which is the direct quote.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Then, Mr. Van Owen, you are excused. And Ms. Varick, we're going to wait for the scoring judges to complete their tasks. Thank you, Tony. Eve. Stephen, thank you. All right, Ms. Varick, you have a witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Avery Becker to the stand.
All right, Ms. Becker, I remind you, you remain under the oath that you took at the beginning of these proceedings. Go ahead, Ms. Varick.
Good evening, Ms. Becker. My name is Ashlyn Bierek. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good evening. I'm Avery Becker. That's Becker.
Let's start by talking about your relationship with Mr. Brackman. Many witnesses have testified to it. Why was it so strained?
We were just so different. We had such different styles when it came to work and approaching mock trial. And I'm a more natural, kind of go with the flow type of person. And he's just very scripted.
Was it hard to have a meaningful relationship with him?
I think it's hard to have a relationship at all with someone who just doesn't appreciate you.
Now, we've heard a lot about events that added to the struggle between you two. Let's hear your story. When you were demoted to B team, how did you react?
I was upset, but I just kept on doing my thing. And Taylor actually later quit and I was reinstated.
How was the regional tournament once you were back on the team?
It actually went really well. I won the Best Attorney Award and Best Closer. I felt like I had finally proved my position on the A team and proved myself to coach, but he thought otherwise.
What do you mean by that?
Practice after regionals, he just started going off at me, saying the only reason I won my awards were because of luck and my good looks.
How did you respond?
I was upset. Coach had just insulted me in front of the entire team. I stormed out of practice and wrote on his car with what I thought was a dry erase marker.
How did you apologize to Mr. Brackman?
First, I texted him. I offered to scrub his car or get a job over the summer to get it repainted, but I never got a response. Then I tried seeing him in person. I went to his work and practice, but he refused to see me. And now he's gone and I'll never get to apologize.
How did this make you feel?
I was devastated. I just wanted to apologize and make things better.
That must have been hard on you, Miss Becker. We can move on. We've heard a lot about your cell phone today. Let's talk more about that. You should have access to Exhibit 14, so please look back at this.
Yes.
Do you know what these are?
These are the text messages the prosecution is claiming I sent.
Could you have sent these?
Of course not. My phone was gone. It was lost. I still haven't found it. It was literally impossible.
Where was the last place you had seen your phone?
The Fry Shack. Taylor and I were playing Among Us. Great game, highly recommend. And I needed to use the restroom. I must have left it on a table or something.
Who else was at the Fry Shack?
The mock trial team and Alex Fuentes.
When you realized you had lost your phone, what did you do?
Taylor and I skipped school the next day looking for it. We looked at the Fry Shack and the mall.
When did all of this occur?
March 6th.
Why do you remember that day?
That's the day Coach died.
Let's talk about Blair Rollins and Alex Fuentes. What do you have to say about your relationship with Alex Fuentes?
We were not friends. We were teammates. She constantly thought of me as her biggest competition. It was after the awards I had won.
Would you ever go to her for help?
No, she would be the last person I would ever go to help. Plus, she wouldn't even help me.
Now, what do you know about Blair Rollins?
I think he hated Coach because
Coach represented his
Objection,
dad.
speculation. This witness can't testify to Blair Rollins' feelings toward Coach Brackman.
Respond. Under Rule 701, this is rationally based on the perception of Miss Becker. She went to the same school as Blair Rollins, and she had a relationship with Mr. Brackman. Also, she has testified that she thought he hated Mr. Brackman.
Response, Your Honor.
Mr. Turnage?
Just because Miss Becker went to the same school as Blair Rollins and had a relationship with Mr. Brackman, that doesn't mean that she was aware or was able to make a real rationally based perception on their relationships, just because she potentially had relationships between the two.
Ms. Vurick, I think that I agree with Mr. Turnage. You have not established or laid a foundation that there was any perception on the part of Ms. Becker as how the two individuals related to each other or what their relationship was. So at this point, I will sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Becker, how did you know Blair Rollins?
He was good friends with Alex Cifuentes. Saw them hanging out a lot. Plus, he went to my school. Obviously, I was aware of him. And Coach represented his dad in a murder trial. And I knew Coach. And Coach definitely talked about it. So,
Based off of all of your interactions with your coach and Blair Rollins, did you come to any beliefs?
well, I thought that Blair Rollins hated Coach. As I was saying before, Coach represented his dad in a murder trial, and Blair's dad was convicted.
Now, Miss Becker, you've been here through the entire trial. You've heard many different witnesses testify to many different things. I'm going to ask you the one question that everyone wants to know. Did you kill Coach Brackman?
No. I couldn't kill anyone.
Why should we believe you?
It's no secret that Coach and I didn't get along, especially after his car, but to go to his house, to break in, to stab him in the back? No, that's not me.
Thank you, Miss Becker. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Turnage. You have a cross-examination.
I do. Good evening, Ms. Becker. I'd like to start with your relationship with Mackenzie Brackman when you were on the mock trial team. You and him never quite got along, did you?
Not really. We were just so different. It took a toll.
It was your impression that he thought you were lazy, stuck up, and disruptive, correct?
Yeah.
He often criticized your work ethic.
Which I don't understand why. I won the awards.
He did criticize your work ethic, though, correct?
He did.
And even though you had won a big award at regionals, you thought he was angry at you the next practice because he believed your lack of work ethic would hurt the team at state, correct?
He was just going off at me. He was humiliating me in front of the whole team. Yeah.
So you got angry at him and wrote worst attorney award on his car in what you now say you thought was a dry erase marker?
I always thought it was a dry erase marker, and I was angry, but I definitely always knew it was a dry erase marker, or I thought it was.
So you vandalized his property?
I wrote with what I thought was a dry erase marker, but yeah, I guess.
And once Mr. Brackman saw what you had done to his car, he kicked you off the team, correct?
He did, and I completely deserved it.
And you were upset?
I was.
Angry?
I'd say mad, but yeah.
Willing to get him back if it was the last thing you did?
That was a stupid, petty thing that I said. I didn't mean it, and it was just upsetting in the moment, but I did say that, but that's not what I believe now.
Because you care a lot about mock trial, right?
Of course I cared about mock trial, but after everything, I knew I needed to apologize to him, and my mom helped me realize that once I calmed down.
Now, you say that you would never hurt Mr. Brackman or his property, correct?
Outside of that instance with his car, I wouldn't do that. I could not hurt him.
But you had already vandalized something of his, hadn't you?
I didn't mean to vandalize it. I thought it was a dry erase marker. I never meant to do permanent damage to his car.
But you did vandalize his car, correct?
I did, but I didn't mean to.
And that was after he insulted you?
Yes.
And this was more drastic. Not just insulted, this time you were kicked off the team. Your mock trial career was over, wasn't it?
Yes, and I completely deserved it.
Finally, I'd like to talk about the location of your cell phone. Now, you claim that you lost your phone at the Fry Shack the day before the murder, correct?
I did.
In fact, you claim it was likely dead or stolen.
I assume so.
So you and Taylor Perkins tried calling your phone from his phone?
We did.
Now, according to Detective Markowitz's previous expert testimony, your phone communicated with 3 cell towers in between your house and Mr. Brackman's house before the murder took place. But you claim that you had lost your phone the day before, correct?
I did lose my phone the day before. That's not a claim. That is fact. That I did lose my phone the day before.
So around 24 hours had passed since you lost the phone and you and Taylor tried calling it?
I don't remember the exact time. I know it was March 5th after I saw the mock trial team there, and I spent the next day looking for it everywhere at all over the mall. And I bet security cameras would show that.
So you're saying that your phone, which had been lost or stolen for an entire day, happened to be moving around in between your house and Mr. Brackman's house right before the time of the murder without it being in your possession?
It was not in my possession. I don't know where it was. I still don't know where it was. I had to buy a new phone.
You heard Detective Markowitz's testimony, correct?
I heard it, but it's not true.
You heard the testimony, correct? The expert testimony?
I did hear it, but
So you're saying that it's just a coincidence that your phone was moving around in between the 2 houses before the murder took place?
I didn't know where my phone was. I don't know why it was doing that or where it was. And I bought a new phone. That's what happened.
Finally, I'd like to talk about Blair Rollins. You believe that Blair Rollins was somehow connected to the disappearance of your phone, correct?
I think that's definitely a possibility, especially seeing Alex there and them being like best buds.
Did you ever see Blair Rollins with your phone?
I don't know. I didn't really see Blair Rollins. He's gone missing.
You never saw Blair Rollins at the Fry Shack that day?
I didn't. I saw Alex though, and Blair Rollins is still missing. Where is he?
So you don't have any evidence to support the fact that Blair Rollins was in any way related to the disappearance of your phone?
I definitely think he hated Coach and had a reason. I guess I don't have evidence.
So this is just your uncorroborated theory?
Well, I bet if you had security cameras, maybe there would be something there, but I'm not.
This is your uncorroborated theory though, correct?
I guess.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Varick, do you have any redirect within the scope of the cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Becker, after the car incident, how did you feel?
I was upset, and a lot of things happened that night.
Did you mean any of the things you had said after that night?
Of course not. It was petty things that I said, especially after everything that's happened. I tried to apologize. I tried to make it better. It was stupid of me.
Were you still angry at Mr. Brackman?
When I tried to apologize to him and afterwards, no, when I calmed down, I knew what I had to do. I had to apologize.
And Ms. Becker, did you have your phone on March 6th?
No, I didn't. It was lost on March 5th. It was impossible for me to have it.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Turnage, do you have any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
In the scope of the redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Then the witness is excused. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Eve. All right, well, does the defense have another witness?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests and closes.
All right, thank you. Is each side ready for closing?
Your Honor, the prosecution is ready to proceed.
All
Your Honor,
right,
the defense is also ready to proceed.
thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Turnage.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, do you know what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Felony murder, that's what happens. Avery Becker, a high school student whose idea of self-entitlement truly was unstoppable, met Mackenzie Brackman, a classic coach, determined to help his students his way. But why was Becker unstoppable? She's never really thought of herself as someone that society's limits apply to. From preparing for practice to listening to the advice of other people, she's always just done what she pleases. And in her mind, why should she follow the rules? Why should she do what the other kids do when she can just make it up on the spot and do better than them? All of this against the immovable object, Brackman. Deeply rooted in his ways, he was fully committed to helping his students the only way he knew how, and fully committed to being the best coach he could be. He always believed that if Avery was to be successful, she would need to learn how to work hard and prepare. So he tried to instill in Avery the best work ethic he could, but she just wouldn't listen. Now, there are 2 charges brought before you today that you must find Avery Becker guilty of. The first, felony murder, charges Avery Becker with committing or attempting to commit second-degree burglary in the state of Colorado, and in doing so, killing Mackenzie Brackman, whether acting alone or with 1 or more persons. The second-degree burglary, charges Avery Becker with unlawfully and knowingly entering and remaining in Mackenzie Brackman's dwelling in the state of Colorado with the intent to commit criminal mischief against him or his property. Let's start with second-degree burglary. Jury instruction number 8 required the prosecution to prove that Avery Becker went to Mackenzie Brackman's house with the intent to commit criminal mischief. Both Detective Jordan Markowitz and Alex Cifuentes proved this to be true. Detective Markowitz proved it by showing you text messages exchanged between Avery Becker and Alex Cifuentes, where Becker told Cifuentes that she was going to trash Brackman's house. Alex Cifuentes proved it by testifying that Becker was angry after being kicked off the mock trial team and wanted to get back at Brackman for what he had done. Detective Markowitz also used her expertise in call detail records to corroborate the fact that Becker's phone was in the vicinity of Brackman's house at the time of the murder. Detective Markowitz and Alex Cifuentes' testimonies clearly proved that Becker was at Brackman's house with the intent to commit criminal mischief and thus committed second-degree burglary. Now on to felony murder. Jury instruction number 9 required the prosecution to prove that Avery Becker killed Mackenzie Brackman while committing second-degree burglary. Crime scene reconstruction expert Kyle Kuzak outlined the details of her investigation and recreation of the crime scene. She observed evidence, like the broken plate and missing knife from the knife block, to conclude that based on signs of a struggle, Mackenzie Brackman had interrupted a burglary and gotten fatally stabbed. Detective Markowitz and Alex Cifuentes proved that Becker was committing second-degree burglary. And Kyle Kuzak proved that Becker killed Brackman in the residence. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as you listen to the defense's closing argument, please keep one thing in mind. The evidence establishes that Avery Becker reacts poorly, even criminally, when she doesn't get what she thinks she deserves. If she was the best person at mock trial on her team, she thought she deserved to not prepare. If Mackenzie Brackman insulted her, she thought she deserved to trash his car. And if Brackman kicked her off the mock trial team and ruined her mock trial career, she thought she deserved vengeance. Jury instruction number 2 states that if you find from the evidence that each and every element of a crime has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, you must find the defendant guilty of that crime. Today, the prosecution has clearly proven all elements of Avery Becker's charges beyond a reasonable doubt, so you must find her guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Proctor.
Justice does not come in a puzzle box with a picture on top. It's Friday, March 6th. Detective Markowitz arrives at 444 South Flowers Street, and he immediately finds Coach Brackman lying dead on the floor. So she starts trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. A dead body, a bloody knife, and some home security footage. But what she does not have is any fingerprints, or any DNA, or any suspects. So like a child who is missing some of the pieces, Detective Markowitz begins trying to force the pieces of her puzzle together. After talking to only one of Coach Brackman's students, Detective Markowitz zeroed in on Avery Becker. She told you that the one and only suspect for her in this case was Miss Becker. Members of the jury, the only unstoppable force in today's case was Detective Markowitz forcing pieces of the puzzle together. Along the way, she missed several critical pieces to this puzzle: a credible alibi, a scheming witness, and an alternate suspect. Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury, my name is Madeline Proctor, and together with Ashlyn Viereck and Chalmers Powell, we had the privilege to represent Miss Avery Becker, a flawed but innocent young woman. Now, she had the right to remain silent, but instead she chose to tell you what really happened. She was with her friend on March 6th, and she did not know where her phone was. And you can believe her, because you listened to the three things: a screenshot, cell towers, and a stronger suspect. A screenshot, can't trust it. The prosecution wants you to believe that Miss Becker sent that screenshot. Really? Alex Cifuentes, a suspect in today's case, is the one that gave them that screenshot. You remember her. She's the one who does twice the work and gets none of the credit. She's the one who forgot her phone the night of the interview. And she's the one who waited a full day to send that screenshot to Detective Markowitz. Those messages were faked. But more importantly, you cannot trust the screenshot because Detective Markowitz failed to do her job. Today, she was recognized as an expert in forensic cell phone data recovery. But she did not recover any data from anyone's phone except for the victim. She did not recover any data from Alex Cifuentes' phone. She did not recover any data from Mr. Perkins' phone to confirm the alibi. Detective Markowitz did nothing to prove that those text messages were even real. This forensic data recovery expert took those screenshots at face value. Cell towers. The cell towers are just dangerous enough to accuse Miss Becker, but too vague to prove anything. Miss Becker did not even have her phone. The phone can ping wherever it wants to. Miss Becker did not have it. And a stronger suspect. The prosecution wants you to believe that Miss Becker was the one in the Halloween mask, the hood, and the gloves. In reality, members of the jury, there is one person who fits that description, that height and build, and the puzzle perfectly. Blair Rollins, the suspect who lives in the same cell tower arc as Miss Becker. The suspect who blames Coach Brackman for his father being put in jail for life. And the suspect who was missing then and is still missing now. That's right. Detective Markowitz did not interview Blair Rollins. She did not talk to her. She did not even locate Blair Rollins. Members of the jury, the prosecution carries the burden of proof in today's case. We did not have to prove anything about alternate suspects. They had to prove each and every element of each and every crime charged here today. A screenshot, cell tower, and a stronger suspect. Each is reasonable doubt to the very first element of every single crime charged, that the defendant. In just a moment, Mr. Turnage will get up here and try to wipe away everything we just talked about. Don't let him. Ask him this question and make him answer it. If Detective Markowitz really was an expert in forensic data recovery, why didn't she take the simple step of downloading Miss Cifuentes' phone? Because justice doesn't come in a box with a picture on top, Detective Markowitz. Find Avery Becker not guilty.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Turnage.
Your Honor, I believe I have 37 seconds left for rebuttal.
Oh, okay. I think the better practice is at the beginning of the case or before your closing to reserve any unused time for rebuttal. And in this case, I don't think that happened, but go ahead. You have 37 seconds.
Apologies, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, opposing counsel and the defense has been very quick to belittle the work of professionals today. Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak did not choose a suspect. They did not force pieces of the puzzles together. They observed evidence and drew conclusions based on their professional opinions. Detective Markowitz, a noble police detective, serves this country every day. Do not let opposing counsel degrade and disparage the work that she does. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The case will stand submitted to the jury. And we will let the scoring panelists take care of their business. Bonnie, thank you. Eve, thank you. Stephen, thank you. Is Maureen here? Have the scoring panelists submitted their score sheets to the powers that be? Okay.
I think the panelists do that. So.
Right. So we're all set.
And did Tony? Yes. I mean, Tony.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
All right, great. Thank you. I'm going to give Eve and Stephen 2 minutes each. If you want to give the team some feedback, I don't think Tani can do this since she's not participating verbally. Eve, go ahead. You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Judge. Well, I think everyone did great. I mean, this is such an interesting time to do it on a virtual platform, and you can see how much preparation actually goes into it. I think this is the third time I'm hearing this case, and every time I'm learning something new and seeing how teams focus on one aspect of the case or another differently. So it's very interesting. A few pointers. I'm not going to spend too much time. I think that one thing to remember, and I think it was Trenton, I want to say, thanks for spelling out your last name. That's what was missing from the prosecution's part. And be very careful when you are referencing baseball or any kind of sport or an actor, an actress, or a book or something like that. And it can be very confusing. I know who Nolan Arenado is, of course, and probably everybody here is, but in different forms, that might be, what if that's not their team? You have to be very careful when you do those references. And then the counsel, whoever was directing, you can actually ask to explain in simpler terms or something like that, just to avoid that confusion, something to remember. I think that the one thing to really remember in these exercises, in these mock trials, if you want a good answer, you have to ask a good question. And I think a lot of you did that, and it shows that how much you prepared for this. I think what really, Avery or Julie, I think every time I listen to this case, it's that one last question, that Oscar moment, did you kill Coach? And I was like, okay, what is she gonna say? I think that you went into your character really nicely. I think that was a good performance and good preparation. Overall, I really like the prosecution's closing argument. I think that it was very nice to hear the elements. It was very nice to hear the jury instructions. And I think the defense did a really good job of reiterating your story, your theme of the puzzle box with the picture on top. So
Okay,
overall, really good job.
Good job. All right, Stephen, 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Your Honor.
This is actually my first time doing anything associated with high school mock trial. So I just got to say, y'all were amazing. Really blew me away. I don't have everyone's names down, but just try to go down the list. The openings I thought were both good. Both teams tried to kind of create a theme with the prosecution's theme of the immovable force and unstoppable force and movable object. See, I did it. I always like pair those two together, so it was kind of hard to remember who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. So maybe a different comparison might have been easier for me to keep track in my head. The defense starting off with the puzzle box metaphor, that might be better to go in the middle, because when you start off with it, my first thought is, wait, we're talking about puzzles here? So you just have to kind of get into the scene and thinking about the case and the facts before you start talking about kind of more abstract things. But that's just my opinion. So your coach might have told you the exact opposite. For the second witness with the plaintiff or the prosecution side, Miss Blake and Miss Gordon, you two had a great question and answer. They were really kind of well packaged questions, but it was just very fast. And I like to listen to podcasts at 1.5 speed, so I can usually hear that, but it was still pretty fast. So I'll prefer to kind of course, I'm speaking fast right now because I know I'm on the clock too. But Mr. Powell, you were great too. You had really good witness control in your cross until you got to the who's Brandon Digby part, and you just threw that open. And then the rest of your questions around Brandon Digby were a lot more open. Let the witness talk a lot more. So remember to for each of those parts. Oh,
thank you.
I'm already out. Oh, dang it. Okay, y'all were great. Good job.
All right. I think you guys did a great job as well. I enjoyed the presentation. I thought Taylor Perkins was really good, that he sort of had a very fine affect that let us know that he was this goofy sort of guy who just sort of liked his friend and was going to help him out. But I was persuaded by him very much. And Mr. Van Owen, I thought you were very, very good, very competent. And I liked the way you responded to and incorporated the testimony that you heard from the other side into your own opinions. But uniformly, top to bottom, this is a good job. And I hope you guys enjoyed doing it, and good luck going forward. And you deserve from us at least a little bit of a round of applause. So congratulations. Way to go. And I think that's it. So we're going to sign out.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, scoring panelists, and good job, Team Spain.
Take care.
You too.